Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
This is a More Than Just podcast production.
Welcome to Podcast Season 4, Episode 48. You know, I have to say, this is Episode 48, and there's only 52 weeks in a year, right? So I just want to point out, you know, that, I mean, admittedly, I think in 2 weeks' time, we may not be recording a podcast if I'm not playing my cards right. You know, we're thinking, unless we have the crickets back on the show again. But yeah, just, and kind of, what are we doing? Is Season 4 going to end at 52, or are we just going to start playing with time and space and...
Well, I mean, I guess it depends if you want to discuss this on or off broadcast, but I mean...
Well, we're talking about it now. This is broadcast.
Okay, so realistically, we've got 3 more episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That's the 23rd, the 30th, and the 7th. Those are the last 3 episodes of this season. After that, there is for the first time since the fall, there will be a Star Trek hiatus.
Oh.
So, okay. In theory, we could take a break at that point.
So we could actually theoretically hit 52 and then start season 5 sometime later.
In August, when Lower Decks comes back.
Right.
But it depends if we want to... We will be able to wrap up Obi-Wan next week, but we wouldn't be wrapping up Ms. Marvel, but it's just a matter of whether we care enough to do that or the boys or anything else. It's just, if we want to take a break for a few weeks, we could certainly do that after the 7th and up until it'll probably be mid to late August.
So my name is Symmetra. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there, kids.
And we also have Jaime Lopez Jr. on the line in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
That's the first time in, 8 years that How's It Going didn't really come out that well. But I guess you're recording on your end, so should be fine, right? It's funny, we had a guest host on the More Than Just Code last week, and he's a fan of the show. He's another podcaster, but he's been listening to our show for years and years and years. And he was like totally amazed that the How's It Going is actually spoken by Jaime Lopez, and it's not just a tape loop I've been playing for the last 8 years.
It's not just a soundboard.
I'm telling you. Yeah. Needs to be a supercut.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could just basically take. Between More Than Just Code and this show, we've probably done 500 episodes. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, if you do the math, probably right there. I could just take the same clip and just play it 500 times, and you would not notice a difference. Like it's other than the volume or recording quality or whatever, it's the same every single time.
Don't take it as a negative, Jaime. Consistency is key.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, again, we're still not convinced that he's not an AI. If other hosts on the show hadn't actually met him, he's a Siri voice. You can get a Jaime Lopez Jr. for your iPod or your phone. He can be your ringtone. Alrighty, no fact checks this week. We were perfect last week.
Woo!
All right, and let's dig into the headlines. And guess who's up first? The robot Jaime Lopez Jr., sentient being that he is.
So last week we talked about the fact that it was not Morbin time for Morbius to return to theaters. Sony's going back to the well again, but this time with Spider-Man No Way Home returning to theaters on September 2nd in the so-called The More Fun Stuff version, with more Spider-Man or Spidey-related scenes, partially in celebration of the 60th anniversary of Spider-Man in comics, and apparently the 20th anniversary of Tobey Maguire's debut in the first movie. So,
interesting.
Yeah. Huh. The stars aligned for that one, and if you're going to bring anything back to the theaters, Spider-Man No Way Home is probably a good one.
Yeah, I suppose. They just don't want to show Tom Cruise's movie in IMAX, I guess, right?
To be fair, and I'm not a fan, but it seems to have done really well at the box office.
Was this the Maverick?
Maverick, yeah, the new Top Gun movie seems to have done really well over the last few weeks. I've seen it pop up when I'm scanning for other stories. It seems like it's made a fair chunk of change.
Well, it's I was just chatting with my friend Jason from work, who's a huge film buff, and he used to go to TIFF and all that kind of stuff. He's taken a break because of COVID and all that stuff. But yeah, I was at an event today with him, and I was telling him that I really think that you should see that movie in IMAX if you can. I mean, if you're not going to watch it in IMAX, if you're going to watch it at home, it's a rental. I mean, in terms of quality and amazingness and whatever, yeah, you're fine just watching it at home. But if you can see it in IMAX, I highly recommend it. But yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's, like Tom Cruise is known for hanging off the side of a giant airplane as it's taken off. I mean, he's done that for real, and he's broken his foot jumping from one building to another. He's an idiot, but still. But he does this to entertain the crowd, and the work that these actors who are now pilots as a result of being in this movie, amazing stuff. Anyway, we're not talking about Spider-Man though.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Jaime, you're still movie free since pre-COVID. Is this any more enticing than the previous release?
No, I think since I saw the previous release at home. Whenever it became available on digital, I think I'll wait on this.
So you've seen Spidey?
I've seen Spider-Man, yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember when it came out on digital, maybe back in May. So I technically own it for the $20 or whatever I spent on Amazon to sort of rent, but basically purchase. Which probably means they'll double dip and want another purchase again.
But you don't have the more fun version, right? You have to pay more for the more fun version now.
That's what I'm thinking. Just like when DVDs had, the regular edition, the special edition, the director's cut edition, the Criterion Collection edition, a bunch of double dipping. But going and seeing these at theaters might be kind of nice.
Well, that said, I'm the guy who owns multiple copies of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I mean, I saw it when I was a kid. I bought it. I think I bought it on VHS. I think I know someone who had a recorded copy of it on VHS. And I'm sure I bought it on DVD. I'm sure I have it on Blu-ray. But I even bought the extended version of the Holy Grail, which literally has 2 extra minutes.
Ooh.
To which you're supposed to say, get on with it.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, all right. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that they're bringing Spider-Man back. I mean, I like seeing movies in theaters, and so if there's a movie that's good, I will go see it in the theater. Just because. I mean, I was thinking about this. I went and saw Peter Gabriel's Secret World, which is one of my favorite live concerts. I actually saw him play that tour. And of course, he put out a movie of filmed in Italy, one of the performances, and that's been famously on DVD forever. I saw that at a theater once because they were playing it, and I don't know how many times I've seen Blade Runner in a theater. Like whenever it's on, I'll go see it. Or same thing, if they put New Hope in a theater, I'd go see it. I'd probably go see the rest of the trash that they have under Star Wars banner, but because I saw the Phantom Menace in 3D, so I'm a fan of seeing movies on the big screen, because especially since that the format that the director is actually aiming for, right? Ideally. Yep.
Well, we got to see Clerks, right? We got to see Clerks at the Lightbox,
yeah.
Which is another one that I don't know many people have actually seen that on a screen, right? It was one of the biggest rentals of all time, but 5 people saw it in the theater.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think I saw it. No, I think I saw it once in the theater. Yeah, you and I went. Right?
Yep.
George invited us.
Yep.
Yeah, and I saw the Alien 3D movie, the Alien IMAX cut that they did. That was really kind of cool. And that, they're wearing hockey gloves for, sake, they're not really the special effects. They didn't go out with a huge budget. It was done a year or so after A New Hope anyway, right? But it's still a great movie, right? Yeah, I don't know. I'm a big fan of, and I've seen Shaun of the Dead. I've seen it a couple of times. I saw it when it first came out in the theater, and it was an accidental viewing, right? I didn't even know who Edgar Wright was at the time. And then when he did his little mini film festival, I went and watched it again, right? So yeah, I'm a big fan. And of course, I saw the Michelle Yeoh movie we saw recently twice, right? So I don't know. Would I go see this again? I don't know about Marvel movies. I mean, Marvel movies are great in big theater, right? With big sound and all that.
Oh yeah, and most of them are shot in IMAX. So again, you get a little extra out of it too, because you are getting a a larger version of the movie.
Yeah, true. Cool. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, I'm gonna start my part of the news with some sad one. This really bummed me out. So I had put in an article earlier this week in our notes saying that comic artist Tim Sale was hospitalized this week, and lots of people were sort of hoping for the best, but unfortunately we got the news today that Tim passed away at the age of 66. They haven't said what the cause of death was, but sent sort of shockwaves. This is unfortunately yet another gone too soon case for these legendary crop of artists we've lost lately, between Tim and George Perez and Neil Adams, and it just seems like it's been coming in a wave, which is the worst thing ever. For those that aren't familiar with Tim's work, you probably have seen it in a few different places, even if you're not a comic fan. The most mainstream thing that he's done was he provided all of the art for the TV show Heroes that was on for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
The artists, there was supposed to be the artist who could get sort of precognitive visions, and sort of one of the MacGuffins over the course of the first few seasons was that this precognitive artist had done all this work, and that told the future. And Tim Sale drew all that work. He was the artist behind the artist. Beyond that, as a comic creator, his some just incredibly iconic work from, Batman the Long Halloween, and of course its sequel Dark Victory. He did, the Colors series for Marvel with Jeff Loeb, who of course he did the Long Halloween with as well. But he did the Spider-Man Blue, Daredevil Yellow, Captain America White, and Hulk Gray, they're all these incredibly beautiful, sort of very emotional stories set within the lifetimes of these characters. My personal comic collecting and comic reading history with Tim goes way, 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 way back into the 80s, when the first thing he ever worked on was a comic book adaptation of Robert Asprin's Myth books. He was actually the background artist and the inker on those books. And I remember when he came on board with those, just seeing the quality of them go up, like just being really impressed with the work that he was doing there. And I followed his work into working for Dark Horse, working on the Grendel series, and just, since I've been a teenager, he's been a sort of a constant, fan favorite, as well as, just somebody that I would seek out his books, because they're just such a unique style. It's not for everybody. It is a little, it's very inky. It's very sort of dark and heavy lines, but I love his work. He does this beautiful wash. He does like the watercolor wash on his pages and stuff like that sometimes, and it's absolutely beautiful. If you ever get a chance to see, I have a couple of his art books as well. If you get a chance to see his original art, it's absolutely breathtaking. He was a master of his craft, and it's just devastating to the community to lose yet another one of these incredibly talented people. So yeah, farewell, Tim. That's, man, what an absolute drag. But flipping from there into a little other comic news and comic art news, for that matter. So a very rare piece of original art made it to the auction block this last couple of weeks. One of the most iconic pieces from the 20th century. It is the original painted cover for Batman: The Dark Knight Returns #1. And again, even if you don't think you know it, you've probably seen it. It is simply Batman leaping across the sky with a lightning bolt coming down behind him. And it was just this very iconic, very stark but so poignant piece of art by Frank Miller when he did one of the first sort of deluxe format series in comics history, and took a look at what the future of Batman might look like. And it's this beautiful story, of course, where it's set in the future. Batman is an old man, and it's about him, picking up his suit and putting it back on for the first time in decades. And it's gone on to be this incredibly famous piece of work. It's considered one of the top 10 seminal pieces of comic literature. But this page, I mean, again, pages like this don't come along very often. They're absolute, guaranteed to sell for a ton of money. And so the question was, how much would it go for? The estimates had it coming in at around $2 million US. It did finally sell today at auction, Heritage Auctions, for $2.4 million US. And I've added into our show notes this piece from the New York Times, which I thought was wonderful of them to do in time with this, because the first question out of your mind is, oh my God, that must be the most that's ever been paid for a piece of comic art. But sadly, it's not even close. They do have their sort of top original pieces of art here. The high, so 2.4 is what they paid for this piece of work, and that actually ranks fourth all time for the most for a piece of art. The second, the one above that in third place is from Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 8. It is the last page of the book. It is the very first ever depiction of Spider-Man in his black and white costume. And that was by Michael Zeck, and back from 1984. That sold for $3.3 million US. Number 2 is Hergé, the Belgian artist. It is the front cover of Tintin, the Tintin for Americans. The 1936 cover for the Blue Lotus sold for $3.9 million US.
Wow.
And the number 1, I was actually surprised by this. I mean, it's an incredibly beautiful piece. It's called The Egyptian Queen, and it was a painting done by the legendary horror artist Frank Frazetta. And it was done in 1969, and it was the cover of Eerie Magazine number 23, and it sold in 2019 for $5.4 million. So if you don't think that people out there consider comic books a legitimate art form, I think you're really not looking at it through the right lens, because there sure is a community out there that are treating these like they are valuable works by legitimate artists, because not every artist gets a piece of work sold for that in their existence. So,
okay,
yeah,
cool. Yeah, I'm familiar with that Egyptian McQueen one. I've seen that one before for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Frazetta's work is incredibly. I mean, he has his own gallery. Like he's obviously Frank's gone, but there's there's a whole gallery of his work. I think somewhere in the United States. I can't recall where, but he is considered one of the masters of the craft.
Sure.
But much more, like, he wasn't really a comic book artist per se. He was an artist whose work appeared in comic books.
Right.
Obviously Miller and Michael Zeck and even Hergé are more, sequential storytellers, right?
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you're looking to dip into the market, I've got about 20-25 pieces here that for the low price, I won't even charge you $2.4 million. $2 million even. I'll sell you anything I got in my house. Next up, so we know that we're getting another season of Doctor Who, and now we've got another thing to look forward to in the upcoming season. So Neil Patrick Harris, NPH himself, is going to be making an appearance on the 60th anniversary season of Doctor Who next year, and they have not said what he's going to be, but apparently he's previously worked with Russell T Davies, who of course is coming back as the showrunner for the series after working on it a number of years back, and that was enough to get MPH to sign on board and join in. I guess it's safe to assume that he'll be on an episode with Kuti Katwa as the new Doctor, but it's pretty neat to he's quite a personality, but he's also a wonderful character actor to sort of slide in there. It'll be interesting to see what they cook up for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, we also know that David Tennant and partner named Donna are coming back for something. I don't know if they're sure if it's special or
I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if there was a whole thing next year. As I say, it's the 60th anniversary, so it's gonna be a whole thing, I'm sure. Catherine Tate, I think, is the name you're fishing for there. But it seems like there's going to be a whole lot to celebrate next year when we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who.
Okay, cool.
Little casting news. This one, I don't really know what to make of it.
Yeah.
Apparently, Lady Gaga, according to a bunch of different sources, including Entertainment Weekly, is in talks to sign on to the sequel to the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie as Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
And according to this piece, it also might be a musical.
I've got a path to righteousness here that makes sense if I put this all together.
Okay, bring it in, buddy. Bring it in.
Okay, so I'm not going to deny that it's a little unorthodox, but when I heard, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker with Lady Gaga and musical, I said, oh, well, if I was given, that surprise box and they said, Lopez, you got to make a movie, I'd say, we're making Sweeney Todd, but Joker, right? So the Sweeney Todd with Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. Yeah. It's a play musical. I'm like, murder's involved. I'm like, there you go. That's the way I make the movie.
Okay. All right. I can see that. I just I love the jokes that were going around the internet that day around the socials with my Joker face. It just too much. It just yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I've admitted on a previous podcast I haven't watched that movie yet. It's on my long-term to-do list. I'm sure there's enough there for me to enjoy the film. But
which the Joker?
The Joker. I haven't seen the Todd Phillips Joker movie. They also seem to have a working title, which is Joker Folie à Deux.
For two?
Yeah. Yeah.
Party
of Two.
Oh, Party of Two. Okay.
Yeah. I don't. I'm not sure what that's about, but yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the last thing I've got this week is just today, just this evening, we got the longer, slightly more straightforward trailer for Westworld Season 4. We had seen sort of a teaser trailer. It was much more just sort of atmospheric with music playing and just lots of vignettes of the characters. This one has a little more dialogue and seems to explain a little bit more plot, although as we were chatting earlier, Westworld's such a strange show. It's certainly, it's been a long break between seasons, 3 years. And then, you sort of look at this and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that person was in this. Oh, where did we leave that person off at? I think even hardcore nerds like us are going to need a brush up on this stuff. I know, Tim, you said you were rewatching it, but it's a cool looking trailer. But I must admit,
I'm finishing it. I'm not rewatching it. I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, you hadn't watched it the first time? Oh, okay.
No, I'm in the season 3. I'm still stuck on episode 7. So, can I sort of give you my 2 cents on this right now?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't know what it is about these kind of things. Like it's almost like they had a good idea at first. They started with a good idea and they did some really cool things with it, and they had some sort of interesting ideas, some nuggets, some planted some seeds and that kind of stuff in the first season. It was really kind of cool, right? And where it went with it, but it didn't explain a lot, and it didn't seem that there was a lot that needed explaining in the first season, right? And then season 2 came along, and it's kind of like, I love The Matrix, right? But I'm not in love with the second and third episode. It just seems like they sat it's like the writers went into the room and said, oh yeah, and now we should have this, and we can have this, and we can get a Ferris wheel, and we can have a roller coaster, and we can have candy corn, and maybe we have some fireworks in there, and there's got to be a rapper in the middle of the thing. Like, it just, you know what I mean? Like, just a circus idea of adding stuff to it. And when I watch this trailer, I look at it and I kind of go, how far has that come from the original season when it was like a Wild West, fantasy land where you can go and live out your fantasies as a cowpoke, and be a gambler, riverboat gambler, or be like a lawman,
mass
or a
murderer.
gunslinger. Yeah, gunslinger, whatever. You could be a rapist and pillagist, like if that's what you were into, right? And in fact, who's the main actress?
Oh, Evan Rachel Wood, you mean?
Yeah, Evan Rachel Wood. I heard her on a show the other day, and she was talking about how, and I just heard a snippet, but she was talking about how her character actually started out as a bit player, she had a main theme in the first season, but she was sort of like being, sort of brought along. But she started out as the damsel in distress who, oh no, don't kill my husband or father or whoever it was, and she just kind of rolled over and whatever, and then she eventually came out of that cocoon, and now she's like this kick-ass Matrix type woman in the current season. And it's kind of like the scene where they pull away and there's this big giant sci-fi looking thing tower, where the Avengers have their headquarters and that kind of stuff. It's like the plot line just grows exponentially away from where the original nugget of the story started. And it's like, enough already. Like, I get it. Maybe they should have ended this at some point, maybe after season 2, right? Because season 3, I still find I'm having a hard time getting through season 3 because it's a stretch, right? There's no more horses, no more dust, no more gambling. There's no more of the original idea behind it. It's other than the fact that these sentient beings have now escaped the bonds of their little fantasy world. Now they're running around in the real world, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I think when I put it through the same prism that you treat something like The Walking Dead with, where The Walking Dead isn't about the crisis, it's about how things spin from there. If you look at the first bit of Westworld as sort of that establishing, this is, what these synthetic life forms are, and this is how they're treated, and then it sort of evolves.
Also a story about
there.
The mysterious founders, right? It's also a story about the mysterious founders, like the two guys that started the thing, and where are they, and who are they now, and what happened to them. Yeah, I think one of them turns out to be Ed Harris or something like that, right? Yeah,
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, the whole appeal of the series from the beginning till the end of the 3rd season, I'm sure it'll carry into the 4 seasons, that it's a puzzle, right? The whole thing is, there's all these layers to the mystery. Sometimes it's a very gratifying payoff. Sometimes it's kind of a not as gratifying payoff. I enjoyed parts of season 3. I don't think it was as strong as the earlier ones, but I do feel like they're trying really hard to do something unique. And I feel like I'm there for that. I do wonder, I think you have a fair point, Tim. I wonder how long they can sort of sustain this. Like, I haven't heard, is this going to be the last season, or are we going to do more? But I really do wonder if they can sustain, as they continue to push away from what they started with, can they sustain it? And I'm not sure that they can. What about you, Emily? I know you watched season 3 as well.
Yeah, I think I liked season 3 better than a lot of people online did. And maybe it's because I was like, oh, okay, season 2's felt like a sophomore slump to me, and I felt like they were going somewhere new with 3, and maybe I was more forgiving. So for this, I'm like, okay, can they take where they were going in 3 of like, okay, forget the park isn't a big deal anymore, the whole world is their playground sort of thing. Like, can they make that continue to make sense given how few hosts there are in the real world? There is the scene in the trailer where there's a lot of people just paused around Aaron Paul, which, unless he's in a simulation, makes it feel like there are a lot of hosts that they've been mass producing out in the real world. I don't know what's happening there, but that is one interpretation. Oh, okay, well, if they were able to mass produce an army, it becomes more plausible that they might be able to, like, Skynet Terminator their way around the world.
Yeah. Well, and that was kind of the fun of season 3 is now that we're on the outside, who are familiar characters, who are characters in different bodies. There was a real sort of mystery to the 3rd season I thought worked in a lot of ways because you weren't really sure who you were dealing with and what they were hiding. Again, it's the mystery, right? That it's appealing.
Yeah. I mean, I like the sort of idea that they had, I think it was in season 2 or even season 1, where the main character wanted to get back to find out what happened to her daughter. And then it turns out that was an implanted memory. Mm-hmm. And then, there isn't really a daughter. It's just something that somebody wrote who designed the park or whatever. Those kind of things are interesting because, we empathize with the character and want her to get back to her daughter. And then we find out that along with her, that there isn't really a daughter. I like the episode where she escapes, right, and gets on the train and she's about to leave and she gets 3 miles away from the place and realizes, I don't know, maybe her battery starts to run down or she's not getting a good Wi-Fi signal, but she decides to go back. Mm-hmm. Because she can't fathom the idea of being away from this environment kind of thing, even though her whole drive is to get away from there. I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing, and so I mean, it has a lot of potential. I worry that they're just trying to throw too many like the Ferris wheel and the hamster wheel, and we need to get a juggler in there just to make it, because you need to have the juggler, right? Sort of idea.
Yeah, yeah. That is the one thing I did kind of feel by the time it's an amazing cast. Like, I mean, you got Rachel Wood, you got Soundway Newton, Ed Harris, Jeffrey Wright, Tessa Thompson, Aaron Paul. Like, it's ridiculous. James Marsden. Like, it's insane how many good people there are in this show. But it is also starting to feel a little like there's so many people that it's hard to sort of track all their stories. It's hard to keep track of. And then some of the characters are actually, they're the synthetic life forms, and some of them are people in disguise, and some people are in different bodies, and you're trying to remember who's who. It does start to get a little convoluted, especially because they do take really big gaps. They have since the beginning taken really big gaps between the seasons. So it's not like they're sort of pumping it out every 12 months where you can sort of stay on top of it a little bit better. You really do have to go watch those recaps and sort of stay on top of it, or you could get lost pretty fast.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm totally going to watch this. Like, it's an eminently watchable show. It's beautifully made. The sets, the production, the quality, again, the performances. Like, it's HBO, baby.
It's got robots in it too.
Yeah, and pew pew.
Robots and pew pew. Right. How many over to you for some more pew pew?
Yeah, given Tim talking about the Friday night baseball on Apple TV Plus.
Actually, no, I talked about that in the after show.
Well, you've
messed up again.
You've talked about it in sort of general terms in other media, or possibly on the show. I can't remember if it was a More Than Just Code or if it was
More Than Just Code. I talked about it on. Yeah, it's true.
Muddying the waters, because who knows with these sorts of things how they work for non-US market. But Apple apparently has struck a deal with Major League Soccer, so MLS will be streamed by Apple for the next 10 years, starting in 2023. And it's something we have to talk about sort of step by step, because it's a little confusing given the way it's been presented. So it's not part of Apple TV Plus per se, at least not traditionally. So there is a new, upcoming, currently unnamed streaming service for the MLS, similar to the way a lot of other sports leagues have a streaming service. But that will be exclusively available through the Apple TV app, right? That's the first part. New streaming service, exclusively available through the Apple TV app. So hopefully folks are with us here. There will also be stuff that's available to Apple TV Plus subscribers, a quote, broad selection of MLS and Leagues Cup matches. So you'll get a handful of things for free as an Apple TV Plus subscriber, even though you're not necessarily subscribed to the new MLS streaming service. If you're a full season ticket holder, you also get access to this new streaming service, and there will be some selection of games similar to, Friday Night Baseball doesn't have every possible team. There's only a handful of games each week, 2 games, I believe it is, each week, available for free without even a subscription. I think that's what they're doing there. One of the key things here that is unique, as far as I can know, in any sports streaming service is that there are no local blackouts or restrictions. So doesn't matter how many people went to the local game in Toronto. Doesn't matter how many people went to the local game in Seattle. You literally don't need to care, even if you are, in a apartment or condo right across the street from the stadium.
So can you explain to me what is Major League Soccer? I don't know. I don't know much. I don't follow much sports ball as it is, but what is the difference between Major League Soccer and FIFA, for example? Why would I care? Is this like the Toronto team that plays in this league?
Yes.
Okay. And who else is in this? Is it like a sort of a mini? Is it like the WHA kind of thing? Is it an offshoot of real soccer?
It's basically, it is the highest level of competitive soccer in North America. Therefore, it's about the 9th best league in the world. Yeah, I said it. It is, if you're a soccer fan, it's the best you're going to get on this side of the ocean. If you compare it to insert any European league here, it's not quite as high caliber. We tend to get a lot of Canadian, American, Mexican, South American players. And then we get a lot of European players who are just looking to cash a paycheck for that league. It can produce some nice soccer, but then you watch European leagues or Champions League, the UEFA Champions League, or you even watch, frankly, if you watch, go down to the Mexican League and some of the South American leagues, it's the best we've got. Jaime, I'm sure you disagree because I know you're a Sounders fan, but I just honestly, I've tried watching MLS and we've been lucky to have a competitive team in Toronto from time to time. But once you've watched, the UEFA leagues and some of the other leagues in the world, and then, heaven forbid you watch the UEFA Euro Cup or World Cup, you realize that the caliber of soccer it's only okay.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment given that it sits in a weird spot, Tim. So when it comes to Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, all of the best players in the world play for teams in the USA or North America, right? MLS is kind of the weird outsider in that it has been growing, it has been getting better for decades, but didn't start out as the sort of premier place to be, probably given because it's been a journey for the world's game to really start making headway in the US, right? So in terms of the quality of competition, I think Jonathan's right. Like what you'll normally see is people who get just a little too old for something like the EPL will come over and be a star player for somebody like the LA Galaxy or the Seattle Sounders or something. So Toronto
had like a guy who was a bit of a washout in the Italian league and came over here and was one of the best players in MLS. He was undersized and he could kind of scratch the surface of the Italian national teams, go sit on the bench. But it gives you an idea of how good the caliber of soccer is in some of those leagues when, like the 14th guy on those teams comes over here and is often the best guy on our teams.
Yeah. So that's probably why Apple was able to get the no blackouts, no restrictions kind of thing, because MLS isn't starting from a superior negotiating position with somebody like Apple, right? This isn't the NFL who wants to divvy up the rights as much as possible. And according to people who claim, and it looks like it's the Sports Business Journal reporting that supposedly Apple is paying a minimum of $250 million per year to the MLS.
I think it's a win-win. I mean, the league needs Apple. Apple needs the league. They both need to build credibility in certain markets, and I think it's good for both of them. That being said, I hope that with that infusion of cash, because it's also a very different league in that it's not like a traditional North American sports league. The teams are not separately owned franchises of a league where the owners have the say. The teams are owned by independent entities, but they're all under the umbrella of Major League Soccer. The league owns the teams. So they do weird things like the league will basically agree to sell a player to a European league and sell them out from under the teams, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah. It is weird. And I am hoping that the partnership here can provide a superior fan experience that maybe begins, dislodging the many greedy paws that have been on other sports leagues streaming and eventually get us to be able to cut the cord from the cable providers. Like as an example. So I thought, okay, I don't have Root Sports here in the Northwest because I don't subscribe to cable TV with Comcast, and said, still want to watch the Mariners. What should I do here? Let me get MLB TV. You can watch every game, right? You can't if you're sitting in the market where Root Sports is for the Mariners. So I would have a better Mariners experience if I was just a little bit further away from Seattle, which is dumb. It's like, okay, I paid $100 for this. Let me go figure out how to cancel and get my money back.
Yeah, it's the way they do those blackouts, and I know they do them for other sports too, but the way they do those things is always a little confounding where it's like, I get that they want people at the ballparks, but I'm not sure that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't be so upset about it if it was a seamless part of the onboarding experience, right? They should have said, hey, great, you want to watch MLB TV. Obviously, unless you're like super deep into every team, you're probably going to watch one or two teams, right? Which teams do you want to watch? I want to watch the Seattle Mariners. Okay. Unfortunately, you won't be able to watch any of these games live because of where you happen to sit. And then I go to say, okay, I guess I won't sign up, right? It would have been a more positive experience then. signing up and wondering, hey, why are all these blocked? And then having to go figure out how to get my money back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we should move on to the real purpose of this show, which is to talk about something Star Trek related and possibly some Miss Marvel and maybe some Obi-Wan Kenobi later on in the show. So I'll dig in. I'll go first. I'll talk about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I think this is episode 7, correct?
Yep.
Season 1, episode 7, The Serene Squall. And interestingly, it starts with a recap of talking about T'Pring and Spock's relationship. They throw a little bit of Nurse Chapel in there being, teased by Spock's ability to survive a lot of pain and also, toying with him and being, sort of the girlfriend advisor to him about, relationships and stuff. And we also get a reminder that Pike likes to cook. So these are all things that become important in the show. And we start off I can say it in my head. Ankishan to Pill Vulcan Criminal Rehab Center. Not what it says on the tin, but that's what I'm calling it, the rehab center. And I don't know why they have to tell us the third moon of Omicron Lyri. Like, I guess maybe on a podcast we'll argue about that fact. And it says Turin's log here, by the way. So T'Pring's log, personal log, 1997.9. So before we go too far in this, I want to discuss the distortion of time and space as you travel through Federation space, because 3 episodes ago, it was Security Officer's log, stardate 3177 Mark III. Episode 2 was Cadet's log, 2912.4, and then the first episode was Captain's log, 1943.7. So what is going on? Like, I get that Captain's log and T'Pring's log are sort of chronologically in order, but are we meant to think that these guys are bouncing around? Because the story does have definite developments from like character development that sort of dovetail together, like serially, right? Like, why do we bounce around in different star dates? I don't understand. You think it's the whole relativity of traveling around space and time runs on different lines and stuff? Theories, thoughts? Nothing. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really have much. I thought they were just making random stuff up and had no particular scheme in the original series era. I know it's not true for TNG.
Oh yeah, that's true. In the original series era, they weren't necessarily meant to be. The adventures weren't necessarily meant to be in order. In fact, I don't think they were all written by different writers. So who knew, right?
Yeah,
like they weren't meant to be chronological.
I think it's hard. It's hard to say whether we're supposed to take these. I mean, it's funny because the recaps are doing recaps to show you things that happened in previous episodes. So clearly there is a chronology to the episodes in the order they're showing them to you. So having that out of sequence is certainly incongruous to that. But I don't know if that's supposed to do with the fact that, at times they're further away from temporally. I couldn't even say. I couldn't even begin to theorize where that comes from. But good note.
Sounds like Security Officer Lon's log at 3177 Mark III. I'm sure that falls into the original series timeline, right? So I'm sure that we can probably go online and check this for next week or whatever. But I was just curious as to why the numbers keep moving up and down, whatever. Anyway, so back on T'Pring's log, she's talking about how she's how she has to, dealing with the rehabilitation of Vulcan thieves and murderers is not an easy task. And, another thing that she's been doing on the side is trying to figure out how to spice up her relationship with Spock using her human term. And she's been studying human sexuality, at which point when she tells Spock this, he almost chokes on his drink. And what? So she tells him she's been studying human sexuality, and she feels that it's her job, since he's half human, half Vulcan, it's her job as the full Vulcan to understand what makes him, sort of thing. And of course, Spock immediately runs to Nurse Chapel and says, what is this about? What, this is the note she passed me in class. I'm not sure what to do with it, right? So Chapel's talking to Spock about the current mission and about how, what does he think about Dr. Aspirin and all kinds of other things, and she realizes that he's not listening to her because she talked about having the doctor having razor blades for on her palms, and doesn't get a rise out of Spock. At which point he tells her that he's distracted because this dialogue that T'Pring has brought into him, and so and she sort of says, "Are you trying to tell me your girlfriend's moving too fast?" And So, which is generally what he's trying to say. And then and she says, by the way, a little bit of advice: next time, listen to me and make sure that you're paying attention. He goes, yes, because you're charming, and I'm obviously missing that point. And so then here we go. So then we see Dr. Aspen in the ready room talking to Pike and Una and Omega about these missing colonists that she's concerned about. And they've been missing for 26 days, and they're on the outs. They're out of Federation space, which I don't know if she knows this or not, but she's sort of pleading with them to help because Pike's got a reputation as the Boy Scout, and Boy Scout, who, me, Boy Scout. At which point Una points out it is in your file, Chris. But yeah. So the tease here, she goes to she's obviously appealing to the Boy Scout to go off into Federation space, without a permission, and at the risk of getting scolded by the Federation itself, Starfleet, I guess. That come and help me rescue these things, and that's why I came to you. And he goes, well, this outside of the known Federation space is considered the Wild Wild West, and so there's a big chance. And Aspen tells him that she's afraid that this pirate ship, the Serene Squall, is behind the kidnapping of the colonists, and she tells him to steer clear of them because they're pirates and they're bad guys, and they'll of course, I guess, playing a little reverse psychology on the Boy Scout, getting him to get all riled up and decide he wants to go in there. And he asks her at the same time, like, well, I heard you used to be like a counselor on Starbase 12 or something, and why did you change to be this, this sort of missionary sort of person kind of thing? And she says, well, I realized that, the people that get help at the Federation are within the Federation, so I decided I need to, go outside of the Federation and help people beyond that, right? So she gives them some coordinates, whatever. They arrive at the coordinates, and it's like when the Millennium Falcon arrives at Alderaan, everything's been destroyed, and I'm not sure if that was a planet or whatever that was blown up, but there was no signs of the ship, and everything's destroyed in that area, and they couldn't find a ship or whatever. And so Aspen says, well, obviously they've been taken prisoner, and they're like being held hostage and that kind of stuff. And so Pike says to Spock, how long would it take us to get a message to get permission from Starfleet to go into this place? And Spock says 2 days. And he goes, well, set a course and set some beacons up and send a message to saying, hey, we'd like to go into Federation space, but don't wait for the answer, obviously. And we'll drop some beacons to relay the comms so they can continue to stay in communication with Federation space, right, kind of thing, or with Starfleet. And we're going to find those colonists before they're sold off to whoever the people are going to sell them off to as human cargo, kind of like slave trade kind of thing deal, right? So Spock's walking down the hallway, and he hears some house music coming from one of the rooms as he's getting closer to it, and it's Dr. Aspen's room, and she's all hot and sweaty because she's been working out. She tells Spock, and so. And there's sort of a play that's going on between Spock because she seems to be pretty flirty with him. She's very throughout the episode, she's watching him closely, kind of thing, and it's almost like, and based on what they were talking about with the relationship with Christine Chapel and T'Pring and the trouble that Spock has sort of finding his way and who he is and all that kind of stuff. This person seems to be like kind of curious about it and watching him as he reacts to things and getting flirty with him in the elevator as they're going up to the in a turbo lift going up to the bridge, and she trying to put on a necklace, and she kind of just holds it out to Spock to help her with the necklace, which clearly he snaps together with a couple of magnets. So I don't understand why she was having trouble doing that. It just seemed to be a way of getting his attention. And then so she talks to him about the Kolinar, which is the Vulcan exercise of getting to know yourself and getting rid of your emotions, purging them from your system, kind of thing. And Spock says, yes, I'm looking forward to mine. And she says, oh, interesting, you haven't snipped your emotions yet. So another reason to sort of continue on this course of playing with his emotions, as it were, right?
And don't gloss over that we got to actually see that, right? Because that's what he's going through at the beginning of the Star Trek: The Motion Picture. That's him doing his Kolinar.
True. Yes, that's true. Yeah, because he never got around to it because he left for Starfleet before he got a chance to do it, right? So And so they arrive there and they start to explore and Pike tells Ortega to move in closer and she says, how close? Like first date close or third date close? And he goes, blind date close. She goes, okay, proceeding with caution kind of thing, right? And as they're going there, they immediately all of a sudden this laser net appears around them, and it reminded me of the Tholian Web. Yeah, Tholian Web episode, right? And so interesting though. Of course, as you know, when I make my notes, I always watch the episode and then I go back and make my notes. So I knew the ending of the thing before when I went back to do the notes, and I'm curious, John, did you notice that as you were watching the show, did you notice how closely Aspen was watching and feeding them information?
Oh, she was the bad guy from the second she walked on the screen. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. You think?
Oh,
okay,
God.
Right.
Oh, my God. Never trust a woman with a facial tattoo. Come on. That's rule number one.
Rule number one, yes. Yeah, I wondered about that. I didn't have a facial tattoo, but I thought that was kind of weird, too. And anyway, so, of course, she has the answers, and she's like, well, I think, if we don't you think if we found the one that has the strongest signal, we can figure out which is the main one, and we can take that one out and take the whole web down, because they can't drive through the web. They've decided they're going to blow up or get chopped in half if they do. They've obviously seen the season 3 of the Boys, right? So you don't go through lasers.
Or the Obi-Wan Kenobi fight with the stormtrooper falls through the laser beam.
Oh yes, that's true. That was another one. Yeah. So they can't do that. So they do have to figure out. Of course, basically Aspen is telling them how to escape from this thing. The two of them. So they find that two of them, in fact, have a strong signal, and so now Spock has to. And Pike says, make a guess, and which of course Spock can't do. Like, it's not within his nature to make a guess, right? And go with your gut, they tell him, and so he just arbitrarily picks one. He's obviously stressed about picking it up, and luckily he got the right one, and it blows up. The web comes down, and Pike says, good hunch, and off they go, pat him on the back kind of thing. And it's interesting because that's when I noticed that Aspen was really watching Spock's reactions to everything she was telling him and kind of seeing how he reacts to these things, right? And later on, she comes to his chambers and she tells him she's come to help him. As opposed to, he says, "How can I help you?" No, I'm here to help you. And she knows he's talking about his Vulcan heritage and how he's half human. She says, "Well, that's just genetics." And he says, "Well, but I was raised on Vulcan." She says, "That's just geography." Tells about this, and this is, I've heard this theory before, where we tend to make boxes for things, and we put things into boxes because that's how humans in general, I don't know how Vulcans do it, but humans in general tend to categorize things. It's how we sort out life and the universe and everything, is by putting things into nice little boxes. And she explains that's, as she puts on her counselor voice, and that's what you are, but not who you are. That we have to figure out, right? So anyway, we go back to the bridge, and you see Ortega's got her hand, sort of almost inside the panel on the deck, as she's flying carefully through this debris. And Pike's like, "Hey, if you need a break, we can get somebody else to do it." She says, "No, I love flying manually. Love doing this kind of stuff. It's like the ship and I are having a deep conversation kind of thing, like a third date kind of thing." So they do come across a colonial ship, and they sensors pick up 200 people sort of in one area, and the doors are locked, and there's 30 other people milling around, and so they determine that those 20 people must be in a brig, and the 30 people are the boarding party that have taken over the ship, right? So they decide, they're going to do an away party thing, and Lon and Pike and a few other people go over with heavy weapons, like they're wearing black, outfits and stuff like that, and Una says, as they're getting into the transporter, like, "Now who's playing fast and loose with the rules here, Pike?" And he goes, "Who, me, the Boy Scout?" kind of thing. Anyway, so, okay, we have to talk about this. This is the second time I've seen this in the show, right? They get there, they're in a dark environment, right? And the first thing he says to everybody there, they've got their weapons drawn, "Turn your lights on." What?
Make sure you put on the
audience
make sure you put on the red lights that make the target in the middle of your chest.
Exactly. Like, is this so the audience can see the actor's face? Because, a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever noticed this in sci-fi movies, they have, like, space helmet, and the light, when they turn the lights on, it illuminates the actor's face. It doesn't illuminate the surroundings.
Which would make it impossible to see.
Exactly. exactly. Yeah, it's the same thing with when you see driving scenes in cars where the dashboard is illuminating the people in the car.
Yeah.
Again, like you cannot drive like that.
No.
I don't know about you, but
No.
anyway,
It's an actor-friendly thing, Tim. Yeah, I want to scream every time I see somebody like Iron Man. I'm like, why does he keep taking the helmet off? No, take the helmet off, no matter how convenient it is.
Yeah.
Keep that thing on at all times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I've got in my notes here, lights, WTF, question mark. All right. So they get there, and of course, there's no prisoners. And I just hear Admiral Akbar going, "It's a trap!" So of course it's a trap. And we flip back to the ship, and Nurse Chapel's walking along, and she sees a couple of invaders running through the ship, and so she hides. She scurries up a Jeffries tube. Okay, it's the first time we've seen Jeffries tube in the show too, which is kind of cool. Where Scotty used to go and pick all kinds of amazing things, right? So back on the ship, Pike and the landing crew are surrounded by a bunch of like, you know, people with guns drawn and weapons drawn, and of course there's no comms, and so they have to sort of drop their weapons and surrender. So in the meantime, Una and Spock realize that as they were beaming the people on the landing party onto the ship, at the same time a landing party was beamed onto the Enterprise, and so Una immediately says, invokes Omega Beta 9 and locks out the ship's controls to basically prevent the ship from being taken over by hostile people. And then there's lots of pew pew and neck pinching and Spock hurling people around, and meanwhile also protecting Dr. Aspen. But yeah, lots of really cool neck pinches. And it's funny because I don't remember. I think I remember when Spock came up with a neck pinch in the original series as a way to get around a particular situation where Spock had to fight somebody, right? And Leonard Nimoy says, well, Spock wouldn't fight. He would, there must be something he could do, and that's when they came up with the neck pinch. I don't know if you know they could do that, but this is interesting to see him just, randomly neck pinching people, and at one point when he picks up the guy and throws him across the bridge, right? That was kind of funny, but and of course, people being shot and all that kind of stuff, and as Spock is trying to get Aspen off the ship to the turbo lift, or off the bridge to the turbo lift, there's a shot that fires, and she gets hit in the shoulder, and they end up as the doors close, they escape the thing, and then we see I'm calling him Rubber Boot Orion,
Remy.
Remy is walking through the puddles to talk to Pike, and he says to him, he snaps his face and says, "Welcome to the Serene Squall." And of course, we flip back to, this must be a commercial insert because way we go back to the ship. So Spock is busy taking Dr. Aspen to the sick bay, and don't worry, we'll get you to the sick bay. And I don't think she looked worried to me. I don't know about you guys, but so they happen to see that the bridge crew's been captured, and Una and him, make eye contact. And I don't know if she didn't quite, to me, like make a just sort of yes, I see you kind of was the vibe I got from her. Nothing like don't attack or don't whatever.
Yeah, I think it was pretty unspoken. She was, she was sort of telegraphing, "Go away, don't."
Yeah, stay free. Yeah. Don't interfere, right? So, of course, now at this point, Aspen's like, "Let's hide, let's run away, let's get out of here." So they scurry up the Jeffries tube, and away we go. And then we back on the ship. The Pike has been on his knees, and he's busily having his face punched by an alien as Remy's talking to him about. I need the codes to unlock the ship so we can take the ship and go off gallivanting around the, non-Federation space and things like that, right? And, I'm going to sell the ship and get lots of money for it and that kind of stuff. And at one point he throws his food, or the oatmeal or whatever, his gruel that he's cooking, throws it in Pike's face. I don't understand the context of that, but Pike's like, "Oh my God, you eat that? That's horrible." and he goes, "Yeah, but the crew loves my food." And he goes, "Well, do they really?" And of course, you see the lady that's beside him, one of the crew people, kind of like wince and roll her eyes, and so of course, Pike sees this as an in and starts talking about it. He says, "Well, like I think your crew probably wants a great meal, and I'm an amazing cook. I can cook them a proper meal, and Remy's like, no, I just want the codes from you. Stop trying to get between me. Stop trying to, avoid the subject here." And the lady crewman says, or lady pirate says, maybe we could let him cook and have, give us some food to eat, and so in other words, Pike is working his way in between them, kind of thing idea, right? Anyway, so he says kitchen. So, and then we fade out, and so now Nurse Chapel is runs up to. She's like avoiding being captured, and she runs up to a panel and starts tapping away at it, trying send an SOS, and she's like, I can't send an SOS, I'm locked out, kind of thing. And she gets captured by a couple of baddies, and they hold it, and you're a nurse, drop your weapon. And she doesn't have any weapons, and I don't have any weapons, I'm just a nurse, I'm just innocent, can't be whatever. And she realizes she's got her hypo spray up her arm, and which is where I keep my hypo spray. I don't know you guys, but in her sleeve, and nothing up my sleeve except my hypo spray. So she grabs the hypo spray, and I guess very quickly, she must be really good with it, she sets it to sedate them, and she manages to sedate the first guy, and then she struggles with the second guy and sedates him, and so they're basically knocked out conscious, and then she can evade capture, as it were. So anyway, so now Pike is busy cooking for the pirates, and he's working Remy, and he's kind of talking to him about trying to get him to break him down a bit, right? And he's like, it seems edible, and he goes, well, they really seem to like it, and so Pike is kind of working himself to be in favor with the crew, kind of thing, right? And toying with their emotions, if I could say that, right? And you said, you shouldn't be taking lip off the crew like that, and then he explains to them the Federation doesn't care what happens, out here in no man's land, kind of thing, but you've taken their main ship, and they're not going to like that. They're going to come after you, and and then he goes, well, we'll take the ship and we'll sell it to someone else, and he goes, well, the Federation is just going to come after them, and then he goes, well, I'll take them to Klingons, and I'll sell them to Klingons, and Pike's like, well, I don't think the Klingons will want to deal with you, and so he's sort of sight talking to Remy to try and break him down a bit. So back in the sick bay, Spock is saying to Dr. Aspen, it's a good thing the phaser was only set to stun. I don't know about you, but I'm a raiding party and I'm taking over a ship. Am I putting my phaser in stun, or I'm putting my phaser in kill?
Well, but then in a few words from now, you're going to explain why maybe there was a stun setting when they were pointing it at Dr. Aspen.
Yes, well, that in particular. Well, again, I know how it ends, but as you're watching this, kind of like, the sell point she says is that, they want to keep us alive so they can trade us as fodder for the slave trade, right? She's like, she keeps saying, like, let's escape, let's get out of here, let's run away into the Kesbar. And of course, Spock is like, that's not an option. We can't let them have this ship. It's too valuable to the Federation for them and too dangerous a ship for pirates to be running around on. And he sort of says to her, and she's like, she says a few things, and he responds to her, you seem to be knowing more about these people than you let on when you first told us about them, right? Well, my husband was killed by them, and turned out he was a Vulcan, and he skipped his Kolinar too, so he had proper emotions and he knew how to deal with all that kind of stuff, and which reminded me of somebody. Anyway, she's like, we need to abandon ship, we need to get out of here, and he's like, well, no, we can't do that, and he goes, well, we can go down to engineering and we can override the lockout. She's like, yeah, that's a good idea, let's do that. And he goes and gets a couple of phasers and hands her one. She's like, oh, no, I can't possibly handle a gun. And he's like, oh, no, you're going to have to now because, we're under siege here, as it were, right? So Pike gets thrown into the cage with his crew, and he says to them, hey, guys, how's it going? I've convinced them to sell us to the Klingons. And Una starts to laugh and says, no, you didn't. And he goes, yes, I did. And he goes, no, we're not Alpha Brago 4. And yes, Alpha Brago 4, which is, and she says to the crew, we're getting them to start a mutiny. So that's the plan. And anyway, Spock and Aspen arrive in the engineering area. They hear the computer saying over and over again, access denied. And so they come around the corner with their phasers drawn, and it turns out it's Christine Chapel trying to, get into the panel and hack the panel so she can do that. And of course, there's all these sedated pirates around engineering because she's managed to sedate them all as she got to the control panel. So Spock walks up to logically Spock walks up to the panel and unlocks it and, frees the controls and sets Chapel to access the comms and sets Aspen to start working on the phasers, which of course she knows how to do because she was in the Federation at one point. I don't know. And, seal the doors kind of thing. And then Nurse Chapel says, hang on a second, the doors are no longer sealed. They've unsealed themselves. And then at which point Aspen grabs both phasers and points them at them and explains that she's not Dr. Aspen. She's in fact Captain Angel, and she now has control of the ship thanks to Mr. Spock and his logical approach to things, right? And he's like, that was quite a thorough deception you put there. And she's, yeah, and what about the colonists? Oh, they were imaginary colonists. I just told you that, and it's basically on you guys that you believed me that this was the thing. And so she sits down in the chair, and then she says, "Fire the phasers," and so they fire the phasers off into blank space and just to see what happens, And she explains to Chapel and Spock, who are now on the bridge with her, that she didn't come here for the Enterprise. She came here for Mr. Spock. And at which point we can go back to the planet where T'Pring is, and Stonn comes up and says, "There's a phone call for you here." So T'Pring says, "Thank you very much," and goes off. And of course, we know who Stonn is. Stonn is the guy that she turns on Spock for, right? In the original series.
Yep.
Anyway. So Aspen tells T'Pring when she calls and says, "I have Spock and I'm holding him hostage, and I need you to trade for one of your prisoners, my friend Zavarius." Zavarius, yeah. Yeah, so I need to trade for him. I can't possibly do that. She says, "I'll lose my job, and I'll get bring shade to my family, and I'll get I'll get kicked out." And as well, by your sacred bond with Mr. Spock, you're responsible for him too. So what are you going to tell them if you let their favorite son die, kind of thing, right? And Vulcan's favorite son. So T'Pring obviously has no, and Spock's like, she won't comply and she won't do it, and Aspen's convinced that she will comply and she will do this because it's not logical for her to do that, because logic has nothing to do with it. It's emotions. She says, I've been using emotions on you all day to sway you all day, and you've done what I wanted you to do. In fact, right? And then so finally we're back on the captured ship, and Pike is talking to the black pirate lady, and he says, "You think Remy has what it takes to make the deal with the Klingons?" And he's actually talking to Una while the other lady's overhearing. And I guess they have to do what he says, and he's the captain. And the black pirate says he's not the captain, and he goes, "Well, if he can't have many friends with the way he cooks. Why don't you let us help you? We'll help you, with your take over the ship kind of thing, right?" And as the woman walks away, and then he says, "Alpha Braga 4 works every time," right? So T'Pring actually does show up in space, and she's like, and Captain Angel is like, "Let's trade," and and Spock sort of says to Chapel, "I think I figured out who the Vulcan is," and so he runs up to the screen and says, "T'Pring, attack the ship, destroy this ship. Don't let them take the ship." And at which point, Angel shoots Spock and basically knocks him out. So Christine runs to him to help him out. And then, but wait a minute, yeah. And then a little while later, as he wakes up, he sort of says to Christine, he says, "Follow my lead and just go along with what I'm doing here." And he runs up to the screen and says, "T'Pring, I have to tell you, I cannot deny my feelings. I have to tell you and he's fumbling, and Nurse Chapel runs around him and says, "Yeah, he's trying to tell you that we're having an affair," and at which point she's like, "I don't believe you. This is just a ruse." Or Dr. Aspen says, "This is just a ruse to Aspen / Captain Angel." And at which point Spock and Christine smooch is the best way to say it. They really go at it. And T'Pring's like looking at them incredulously, and she's like, "Well, I have no choice but to sever the bond." And of course, then Spock and T'Pring do their little thing with their fingers held up, their Boy Scout salute, and they Girl Scout, I think it's Girl Scout salute, and they
three fingers for the Boy Scouts, 3 fingers.
3, okay, I think it's 2 for Girl Scouts. So and he's like, "Goodbye, T'Pring," and she's, "Goodbye, Spock," and that's it. And at which point, all of a sudden, there's a blast, and then of course that they can fire on the ship, and at which point the Serene fires on the Enterprise, and they're like, "What's going on?" And they bring up the screen, and of course, Una says, "Our backdoor codes have taken over the Enterprise, and they've turned off the weapons and the navigation and stuff like that," and so Pike says, "We've get out of my seat. I've taken over the ship, and I want my ship back." And at which point he tells Ortegas to fire gently on the impulse engines, and she fires, and he says, "I'm gently," and she says, "What does fire gently actually even mean?"
It was a great line.
Yeah. So, at which point Captain Angel's telling Spock that Zavarius always talks about you, and I'll come back sometime, and we'll take this on again. And she uses her necklace, which she was helping with him, to beam off the ship by herself onto her own little what do you call it?
Runabout, yeah.
Her gets into her own TIE fighter and flies away, right? And to come back again in Empire Strikes Back. Anyway, so Pike says, "Can you beam us off now, like right away? Because the mutiny's still in progress, and of course the pirates are trying to break into the bridge, and so they beam them off. And so, long story short, the pirates are captured. We fade away and come back to the Enterprise. The pirates have been captured and taken away, and that kind of stuff. And yeah, just autocorrect here is not helping me out. It says Spring. No. T'Pring realized that she shows up with Spock and realizes that the whole thing with Christine was fake, and she believed him, and we better reaffirm our vows, and so they decide they go off and knock boots again.
Something about duty and booty, Jaime?
Duty and booty.
Exactly.
So later on, Spock goes to talk to Christine, and to recap his sort of exploits and thank her for her helping with the ruse. And at which point she asks him about Sarek, and he says Sarek had a son out of wedlock, or like a bastard son sort of thing. And I think she says to him, "Your human side is useful after all," because he was able to use that to smooch with her. And he starts telling her, applaud your performance on the ship, and I thought you might want to talk about your feelings because you're human, and humans always want to talk about their feelings. And she says, no, I told you earlier, and I didn't mention this earlier, but she says she likes Vulcans because they're honest and they're not hiding anything. And she says, I know where I stand with you, kind of thing. And in a sort of disappointing voice, because I think we always know that Christine Chapel as a character is always pined after Spock, right?
Yeah.
Even in the original series, right?
Yeah.
So, he says, I think I know who the son is. He says, this person is basically my half brother, and of course we see the half brother Sybok. At which point, William Shatner comes and directs the next episode.
Ah!
So yeah, and of course we see T'Pring and Ston. They go to the prison cell, and you see a character who looks a little from behind looks a lot like the Sybok character from
Star Trek V.
Star Trek V.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that's how the episode ends. We see, the half silhouette of Sybok.
Yep.
Dun, dun, dun. Who embraced his whole emotions, and he had that whole way of showing people, what they. I like the beginning of Star Trek V. It got really incredulous halfway through, right?
Halfway.
Yeah. I like the idea that Sybok had this sort of magical, Carlos Castaneda's, reveal your inner self to you kind of thing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the bugs that Khan puts in people's ears, right?
Yep.
Make them do what he wants, right?
Yep.
Very similar. Yeah. So interesting. So and we can talk about the actress is trans, right? And
yep.
Which is I've forgotten her name, but
Jesse James Keitel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It so. Not only was Jesse James Keitel portraying Aspen/Angel, and she goes by she is a trans woman, but the episode was actually directed by Sydney Freeland as well, who's a trans person as well. So,
oh really?
And the part of the episode you mentioned, the part where she goes into Spock's quarters and she's wearing this leather catsuit that is transparent in some places, and she looks sexy as hell, and mm-hmm. and she's clearly there to sort of throw Spock off his game a little bit, and she's making this sort of metaphor for non-binary existence, right? She's basically saying, right. She's talking about that line she's talking about geography and genetics, and she's talking about fitting into boxes. Well, that's the metaphor for just because you were labeled this at birth doesn't mean that's who you are. You need to discover who you are. Right. That's right. Of course, a beautiful metaphor for the experience of a lot of trans people is this: the body isn't who I am. It's just what I'm stuck in. I'm going to be who I am. Right. So I thought that was really deftly handled, considering they never hit you in the face with it in this episode, but it's there.
Yeah.
And she was great. I thought she was a great villain. She was, she's very sweet, sort of ingenue in the first half, and then she sort of turns and she's kind of a, curled lipped, snarling, asshole at the end of the episode. And I thought she did a great job. I'm hoping that in the way that we used to get these one-off episodes of Trek back in the day, and even up into TNG and other Star Trek. Yeah. We get these kind of villains and we may never see them again. I'm hoping that this is the first of at least another one appearance by her, because I thought she was great.
Yeah, it was like Ensign Rowe. I remember her on
Michelle Forbes. Yeah.
Yeah, she came on and she was amazing. Was she in Battlestar Galactica?
Yes, she was. Later. She was later in Battlestar Galactica. You're right.
Yeah, but she liked it. It was an interesting character because she came on and she was, enticing and whatever, and she was, hard nosed and all that kind of stuff. And so it was a good foil for whoever they put her up against, right?
Yep.
And she was a Maquis too, wasn't she?
In the end, she does quit Starfleet to join them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most recently,
but she was in
TNG,
right?
An actress on New Amsterdam, the hospital-related drama. She played a seemingly evil administrator.
Yeah, she's a good performer. I've seen her in some other movies and stuff. I think she's really talented.
Yeah, for sure.
Can we digress just for 1 second? And so they talked two things that kind of caught my ear in this episode. One was when they were talking about how Aspen / Angel, so I guess when she was Captain Angel, says, oh, you think they'd give up their, favored son. I always get the impression that Spock was not so much the favored son, because even though he's the first Vulcan in Starfleet, he's kind of hated for being quote unquote a half-breed, right? Like, I think
exactly.
That was not how I ever perceived him, especially in that era. Maybe over the course of the 220 years of his lifetime, he was considered a great Vulcan, but not at that point in his life, I don't think. But beyond that, I found myself, as they were talking about, Zavarius is an alias. I think who she's referring to is actually Sybok, my half brother that my father had out of wedlock. And I was thinking, speaking of Vulcan disgraces, how is it possible that even right into the TNG era, that Sarek is this beloved member of the
ambassador,
and he's this high-ranking thing? Okay, so one, he marries a human and has a half-human, half-Vulcan child, so that's like a no-no.
Yeah.
He adopts a human child in Michael Burnham, also a no-no, and brings her to Vulcan to be raised. And then he has a child out of wedlock as well. And I'm like, this guy, he must be super charming in person. And that is not the impression I get from him. But how does he get away with all this stuff?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah. Like, well, and it's kind of like if you think about it, put two and two together. He's sent to Earth to study humans, right? How does he convince Amanda to become his,
I mean, some people are attracted to Stoics, right? I mean,
well, no, I get that, but I'm I'm thinking, like, is he like Thomas Jefferson, who sampled the wares, as it were?
Oh, where is that spin-off series? Correct. Yeah, the party years.
Yeah. Or Sarek, for sure. Well, no, because I mean, like, you're right. Like having what he and Amanda are like, solid right to the very end there, right? So
this is, of course, after he's already had the child out of wedlock and I mean, okay, sure.
Well, because it's kind of funny because, like, I mean, they introduced Michael Burnham as the human daughter, Spock half sister or whatever, in Discovery, right? Yeah. And that and of course, we knew about Sybok from Star Trek V, but like, where does Sybok fit into things? Is he younger than Spock?
No, I think he's got to be older. That would be my impression. Even, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean,
so he was a college drunken, frat binge, or what?
No, I mean, are we supposed to because the other assumption would be that he cheated on Amanda, which doesn't compute either, right?
Yeah.
What do you think, Jaime?
Yeah.
I figured it was a sowing wild oats kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense. Tracks with the character.
Got the girl pregnant in high school or university or whatever. Yeah.
For a species that doesn't feel emotions, they
do seem to knock boots quite a bit.
They sure hold hands and kiss, and again, there's no practical purpose for those things beyond,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Spock and T'Pring kiss in this series, right? Yet Amanda and Sarek only ever rubbed two fingers together, right?
Yeah, but maybe they just didn't do PDA, right? Like maybe they weren't behind the closed doors. He was like, "Hey, put on them boots."
I'm sure it's this human, Federation, influence on these Vulcans is corrupting them all, right?
But then the fact that he has a human wife that he brings to live on Vulcan, and then adopts a human child that is not from that relationship, and has a half Vulcan child. Again, how could this guy be revered? Like, does not add up.
Yeah, it does. It's true. It doesn't fit with the whole Vulcan purity kind of idea, right? Although maybe maybe it was logical for him to have a child out of wedlock. It had to have been, right?
Sure.
It's only logical for me to come and knock boots with this strange woman who I'm going to impregnate, right? Anyway.
All right. So Obi-Wan,
that would be the Jaime Lopez Jr. guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know that it needs like a super detailed recap because it's not that complicated, right? It's kind of more setting some things up and paying off some things that happened, right? So we do get a little bit of the, here in part 5 or part V, if you like, we do get the sort of fan service thing that we wanted to see of Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan, in this case in a flashback dueling, right?
Hayden Christensen, you mean? Yeah,
Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker.
Okay, so before you delve too deep into that, okay, so I was really excited to see Hayden Christensen and Obi-Wan in the sort of, not Phantom Menace, the Attack of the Clones pre that, like between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones kind of generation, right?
No, this scene is clearly, I think, right before.
Anyway,
the Revenge of the Sith.
At the time, right? Anakin / Hayden Christensen would have been in his 20s.
Yeah, he looks a little older than that.
This guy clearly is in his 40s.
Yeah.
Like, don't we have the technology? Where's George Lucas when we need him?
Yeah, I didn't understand that one.
To retcon these guys' faces. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's going to be some interesting director and or budget choices and some writing choices that are definite knocks on this episode. That was one of them that, like, I mean, it's cool. You got Hayden Christensen and he looks close enough, but you just needed a little bit of that CGI to de-age him just to, like, give us. I mean, you went through all this effort with Luke, right? Like, why would you not do that here?
Yeah,
Where were you saving your pennies exactly for? What were you saving them for?
My only thought on it is maybe it's supposed to be a memory in Vader's head, and so therefore it's not supposed to be a literal thing. Like, so maybe
given that
it's okay
his face
for him
gets
to be
burned off
older
on Mustafar, and given that his face gets burned off on Mustafar, how when would he ever have that many wrinkles on it?
No, it's true. And he also, again, I think the whole idea is this episode is to be framed by this duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin, where it ties into the theme of Anakin says when he's ranting to Padme in Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan is holding me back. And this is because Obi-Wan is saying you will always be held back by your need to win. And so I think it's supposed to tie into that. Again, I think the only explanation might be that this is not supposed to be a literal memory, but an interpretation of a memory from Vader's perspective. But I think it's not well done. I think it's your guys are right. It's confusing.
And again, it doesn't fit with the Clone Wars. Anakin is a completely different, respectable dude, right?
Yeah, I mean, he does in the later seasons. He does start to be a little more. He gives into his anger. He's a little more reckless.
Yeah, but he's like almost understandably, like, he's always sort of charging in, right? Sort of in Clone Wars.
Well,
right?
And you do start to see that he is being treated a certain way by the Council and a certain way by some of the senior Jedi, the Jedi Masters and stuff. Again, there's no justification for what he does when he starts chopping up little kids and stuff. But at the same time, he does have a case for, they're treating me badly.
Right. Sorry, Jaime, we're broke up your...
No, like I said, it doesn't need a traditional sort of, piece by piece recap, because it's not that complicated of a thing, right? It's like, okay, you've got this framing device of the different philosophies of Obi-Wan and Anakin about life, kind of through the lens of their duel of, Jedi don't do this to like win and kill, and Anakin's Cobra Kai sort of mentality of like mercy doesn't help you win, sort of thing. And I think that's something they wanted to frame here, because it goes into the back and forth sort of mind duel, if you want to call it that, between Obi-Wan and Vader long before they even interact with each other in this episode, right? So basic premise is that Leia's Lola droid, which has been taken over with a restraining bolt and is, glowing red evil, has tampered with the, was it like the door mechanism? I think it is.
Yeah, it locks the doors.
Yeah. And they want that to happen so that the Empire wants it to happen so they can come in and get what they want here in terms of the base. They are fully aware that, they're going to close the gates and everything, but everybody's playing everybody else off, right? Reva's playing to try to get to Vader, which, spoilers there. That's kind of a thing that she's been wanting to do for a while. Obi-Wan is trying to play Reva off against Vader. Vader is doing the same thing. I kind of expect Obi-Wan will react this way when we do certain things, because I know his style. We don't need to just obliterate everything off the map. We can just push Obi-Wan to the point at which he will come to us, right? He will give himself up as a noble person. So you've got this sort of, everybody needs to leave, like all these other people, Roken and all these other guys, like all the sort of like resistance type folks. They need to leave on the seemingly only shuttle that can leave. And this will be one of the things we'll come back to later around one of the issues I have here. It's a very similar issue with Rise of Skywalker, but from all camera angles that we see, there should only be a single shuttle here for everybody to just get on and leave, right?
Yeah. But don't they mention they only have a couple of ships in the very beginning?
If they do, it's a really casual cutaway thing, and they don't really establish visually that
hand wavy, as you like to say, right?
Yeah. So Leia's, tiny little kid. She can fit into the air duct. She can put her grubby little fingers in there and fix the thing. So they send her off to go do that.
Again, she's 10. What does she know about electronics and rewiring?
I think they just told her, hey, so the back of this PC is color coded. So if you see a red thing, plug it into the red hole. Because she didn't seem to have schematics or anything, right? They sort of figured out, okay, it's this piece. And you've got some good pew pew pews when the Empire shows up with Reva in tow. They have a little bit of fun between Obi-Wan and Reva related to them talking to each other through the door that's not as thick as you would want, considering a lightsaber goes through it. There is some fighting there in the cave. People meet their untimely end, including is it Tala? Was that her name? The spy?
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. She's got her cool end. Her and the robot. I forget the robot's name. He turns himself into like a Terminator kind of thing, and then he gets shot, and he's just turns into a shield, and she thermal detonates herself. That's all cool stuff. The sort of main part of this episode is the Obi-Wan turning himself over to Reva, right? Like, I'm going to disarm myself. I'm going to turn myself over, which Vader kind of expected him to do. And Reva had wanted Obi-Wan to come in, kind of himself. Sorry, not Obi-Wan. Vader to come in with himself so that she can get him alone, right? So when he does come in alone, we have the shuttle trying to take off. He uses a lot of force power. He stops it from doing so, and he starts ripping it apart. There's like nobody in there. And while he's on his, force power cooldown, the other real ship takes off, which is like right behind it, which I think I have a problem with when it comes to the writing piece of like, why did you need to write this in? Make us think that, oh man, he's like stopped the one ship that was leaving and is ripping it apart. And oh no, actually it was another ship, which feels a lot like Rey, oh no, she killed Chewbacca by blowing up the ship he's on. Oh no, actually, it was another one that he was on. Like completely identical. It's one of those things that is. It's not like a twist. Like we just talked about an episode of Star Trek that like has a legit twist. This one has more of a you were hiding information from us. Like you didn't show us that there were two ships there. You made it seem very, very much like this. Just this one ship is the only way they have to get off. So I don't.
It seemed like it was just an excuse to show him being an absolute badass, right? Like it was just an excuse to show him like pulling a shuttle down using the dark side of the Force and ripping it to shreds, right?
I guess why not just show us that there were two of them then, right? So we sort of think that they, are evenly distributed across the two, and oh crap, he's like stopping at least half of it. And then we could be surprised, like, oh crap, they kind of knew. Obi-Wan's like, look, guess what? He's going to rip apart the first thing he sees. So everybody get in the further one away, because obviously you would attack the closer one and let him wear himself out on that, and then gun it as soon as he's done. Like I could see more of that. Again, it just like, including Hayden Christensen, normal age in the duel. Not a huge misstep, but just you just had a little tweak here and there, and it would have been so much better.
Yeah.
Without changing a whole lot of, and I agree with you that they wanted to show him do cool things. You can still have him do cool Force things. Just don't try to make it fake drama of like, oh no, everybody's doomed. Oh, actually they're not doomed. It's totally fine. They just zoomed away without having it feel earned, I guess, is what I had a problem with. The part that was cooler, though, was seeing Vader by Reva, right? So somewhere along the way here, Obi-Wan has figured out that Reva was one of the younglings, which I think we kind of suspected from the get-go. And she's been in this whole thing just to really get her revenge on Anakin. And Anakin was like, you think I didn't know? I'm not stupid. I was using you this entire time. You were still useful to me. And guess what? You are not a match for me. And she's not, right? They have a cool fight, and it's kind of clear for the most part that he's kind of got her dead to rights, including, taking away her weapon. I thought for a moment he might give her the Count Dooku special when he took her weapon apart into the two blades.
Yeah.
Instead, he went with the just stab him in the gut and hope their healthcare coverage doesn't include the Cuisinart replacement plan. Right. Because we know that's what happened to the previous Grand Inquisitor, and he shows up and just dunks on her immediately, right? And
boy, don't those holes in your midsection hurt a lot? Don't they hurt a lot?
Here's some salt for you. Again, but I asked this question on our Slack, like, how come, like, why don't people ever double tap the Sith? Because they seem to survive these things. Like, didn't they learn from Darth Maul that, even chopping them in half doesn't do it?
Well, it seems like the flaw in the idea of a lightsaber, like a lightsaber, it seems like they're using them a little bit like a fencing foil. They run them through. But with a fencing foil, when you do that, or like an actual, like a real sword like that, it would work because it would pierce you, and then when you pull it out, you would bleed out, or it would puncture your organs or whatever. In this case, it cauterizes as it comes in and goes in and comes out. So that seems like a bad design. If you're going to use a lightsaber, you need to use it like a broadsword, right? You need to just slash from the top to the bottom, because then they fall into pieces, and there's no getting up from, like, if you whack somebody from the shoulder down through the midsection, they're dead. They're really dead.
Yeah. I follow the what I do if I was in like a 1980s horror movie. It's like, oh, Jason or Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, that is, or Michael Myers. Like, I think they're dead. We hit him with like a pan, right? Like a frying pan. Yeah. He's there on the floor, and like, I think I'm just going to keep hitting until he's mush, at the very least. Right? With the lightsaber, it's just laziness to like run him through and then stop. It's like, well, why don't you just cut him in half, and then cut that in half, and then cut that in half, and 30 seconds later, you've got, kibbles at that point.
Well,
right?
There was an ancient torture method called drawing and quartering. Like, he literally chopped them into pieces because there's no coming back from that. And it's, it's a horrible way to go. My only thought is that, maybe both the Grand Inquisitor and Vader were just like, you're not even worth the time it takes to double tap. like we want you to just die here knowing that you were a failure.
Yeah.
Maybe that's sort of the point of it.
It seems to be, because I completely glossed over the fact that she was granted the title of Grand Inquisitor, which is a very short-lived title for her. And Grand Inquisitor before is now presumably Grand Inquisitor again. He's got the little badge, and he was the leader before, so why not? It does feel like a power move to be like, you're done here, dead or not. Like you're no match for us. It's very clear that at the very least Vader can take you out, and presumably the Grand Inquisitor won't be quite so willing to trust you anymore should you show up, on some dark, dusty moon in the future.
Well, and just a savage dunking by Vader where he says, "Do you really think I wouldn't know who you were, youngling?" Like all this time she's like been plotting and looking for the perfect opportunity. Although it's so funny because she's come this far. She's been like in a room with Vader however many times. She's worked her way into this position. She's gone through this whole thing from her childhood on. And then her move was just to like run at him with a lightsaber from behind.
Yeah. Just
like,
dropping,
come on.
Just dropping the ball in the 1 yard line.
Yeah. It just seemed like not the best strategy, and clearly just a bit of a letdown from like her making that call of like, where Obi-Wan says, you're not bringing him to me, I'm bringing him to you. Where, she's like, oh, this is my shot. I can finally take out Vader. And Obi-Wan's like, peace out. I'm going on the ship. You do this. Like, wouldn't it be in the best interests of all parties to, maybe see if you could take this guy out in mass force? Not that would have worked either, but it just seemed like a half-assed plan on what otherwise was a really good long game.
Mm-hmm. You gotta be patient all the way through for your plans. Let that be your lesson, kids. The moral of this story. The other moral of this story is you loose lips sink ships, and Bail Organa is not so great at, operational security. He's like, hey, so I know we're not supposed to break radio silence, but I'm going to do so now. And I'm going to give a lot of information away, including Uncle Owen's like social security number and stuff too, so that people could track him down. It's like, no, what are you doing, man? Presumably that will be. Yeah,
and he mentions the children that gets overheard by an Inquisitor who are looking for children who are Force talented, right?
Yeah. Hey, hope I didn't give you enough info to be like, these are Anakin's kids. There are precisely 2 of them. The
remember that guy you stood nose to nose with in episode 2? Remember him? That farmer that said he didn't know any Jedi? Guess what?
Yeah. That's setting up for the grand finale in part 6, not episode, part 6.
Yep.
So part 6, this is next week, right?
And that's the finale.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen on Tatooine.
Was it just me, or did it seem like it was a missed opportunity when Obi-Wan is on the vessel and they've escaped, and he's clearly thinking about like, have I screwed this up? What did I forget? What have I missed? And of course, they're putting it together for you by showing, Reva finding the communicator and then finishing the episode on Luke. Why doesn't he say, I have a bad feeling about this? He's clearly sitting there, and Leia's like, what's wrong? And he's like, nothing. I'm like, all he has to say is, I have a bad feeling about this. It's sitting right there.
Yeah, there's definitely a meme culture that has grown up around the prequels many years after the prequels had their time in the spotlight. So a lot of people are wanting Obi-Wan to say, hello there. Which was popular. People were talking about wanting Anakin and or Obi-Wan, depending which side you want to, like, when they go into duel, one of them immediately runs to the high ground, just like turns and hightails. To try to.
Were you not waiting for that? Yeah. Were you not waiting for that when they kept intermixing that fight scene between Obi-Wan and Anakin in the past? I was totally waiting for that to be the move where because a couple of times it seems like Anakin's got Obi-Wan beat. I was waiting for Anakin at some point to like climb aboard a planter or like hang off the walls or something and be like, I've got the high ground, sucker.
Yeah, it adds to, the inevitable Death Star duel in episode 4 of like, as you can see, this perfectly flat hallway has no high ground.
Yeah.
It's just man to
That's
man
right.
now.
Yeah. What you gonna do now, old man? No lava, no high ground. Yeah, it was a good episode, but you're right. It was kind of predictable end to end. There wasn't no sort of, I mean, it was sad, obviously, Tala was sort of made to be destroyed, right? Like in a show, we talked about how any prequel has its flaw in that you can't kill any of the main characters. The main characters are Leia's going to live and Luke's going to live, and that Ben's going to live and all these characters are going to live. Even the Grand Inquisitor, when they quote unquote killed him in the second episode, like you knew he was going to live. He's in Rebels, but still, it was a sad moment when, Tala gets pegged and Ned B is trying to protect her and he's getting blown up. And it's, and then she pulls out the thermal detonator and takes out a bunch of stormtroopers and stuff. But it's still a sad moment. I mean, you knew she was there to die. She was meant to be the person who dies doing this, but it's still a sad moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny, Tim, you mentioned in the recap for Strange New Worlds that, it's a trap. This one was, it's a trap. Yeah. And when we get to Ms. Marvel, it's a trap. There's a theme in this week's episodes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of Ms. Marvel, I'll try and run through it pretty quick. Tim, did you have a chance to watch both the first two episodes now?
I have Ms. Marvel? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there'll be no spoilers here. So kids, if you haven't watched Ms. Marvel, we're going to talk about that for a little bit. But it's not the kind of show. It's not a puzzle box show. It's not really trying to sort of figure much out beyond, how exactly did Kamala get her powers. And, sort of there's a couple of little mysteries, but it's pretty easy access stuff. First of all, shout out to whoever does the music for this show, because it's fantastic. Starting the episode with Feel So Good by Mace just brought me right back to my party times in college. That was great. Episode starts with, it's an echo of the first episode where she goes to school and she's sort of, very awkward and very clumsy and very doesn't really fit in, can't even get into her own locker. And this time she's got the powers and she comes in and she's, feeling good and she's strutting through school because she knows that things have changed since she got her powers. And very funny, the Paul Rudd burn that, why did you think you'd have Ant-Man's powers? Because I'm also charming and look younger than I am. That was a really funny Paul Rudd burn. Of course, Zoe, the character that is the sort of cool, popular YouTuber girl, has got all the spotlight on her because she was the one who was saved by Ms. Marvel in the last episode. They're trying to figure out what to call her, and they go up with the name Nightlight, which is maybe the worst superhero name in a long time. And then she, her eyes are drawn to this very handsome, dark-skinned young man who, we find out is Kamran, the new senior in school, and Zoe says, "I'm going to have a party, a life-affirming party to celebrate how, the fragility of life. We all got to come to the party." And yeah, so the sort of story starts to revolve around this going to the party. It's so funny because, I think I mentioned in the last episode that Kamala's powers in this show are much more like Green Lantern's power ring. She even references herself, it's like an idea come to life. Well, that's exactly what a Green Lantern powered ring is. It's powered by your thoughts. And so whatever you think of, you can create using the ring. It's not a good look for the show because it just makes that parallel that much clearer, although it does kind of dumb down for people who are like, what is she doing? The idea that she can sort of think things into existence, I guess, is a way to sort of make that easier. So she goes and has these sort of sessions with Bruno, her best friend, to try and figure out what the powers are, where they come from, how to use them. He figures out that the bangle is not the source of her power, but it somehow has unlocked the power that was inside her. Interesting development. We didn't really have a sense. We thought maybe that the bangle was the thing, but apparently it was just sort of the key to unlock what was inside her the whole time. They discuss how she can create these hard light things. That's what she does when she saves Zoe in the first episode. And here we see her in this little training montage, making slides and steps and sort of using her powers, trying to sort of get used to them. We get a little sort of more character development and towards the middle of the episode with her and her friend Nakia, who are, of course, they're both Muslim, and so they're going to the mosque, and they're sort of more experience and sort of seeing them, feeling like they're sort of out of place there and sort of frustrated with some of the ways that they're treated and stuff like that. So that's interesting.
That was an interesting scene. I was kind of glad to see that happening, because I don't think we get to see, from a person in a mosque perspective, especially a woman, in a mosque, and how they're separated, and they're and the comments about we can't really hear back here because they don't care that we can't hear back here, and and that we're not, and she speaks up, and the
sheik,
I don't know what the
sheik. That's it's the priest guy.
Yeah. The sheik says, sort of dismisses her for, thank you for speaking up, but you're interrupting but don't interrupt my sermon, kind of thing.
Yep.
Or whatever he calls it, lesson or whatever. Yep. But yeah, it was interesting to see that perspective, because I was kind of wondering I knew what they were doing when they were washing their faces, and they were running around
washing their feet, and yeah.
I was waiting for her to put a hijab on, but didn't.
Well, she puts a scarf on.
Yeah,
it's a headscarf on. She doesn't.
In
when she's in the mosque, she puts her headscarf on. Yeah,
but even in the date part, where she's at the very end, when she's given the scarf by her friend to go on the date with so and so.
Oh yeah, with Kamran. Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't, because I kind of wonder, because I do know that in some of the Muslim women I've worked with, I've worked with Muslim women before where I can't even make contact with them.
Yeah, because you're not a relative, you're not their husband. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. You they wear the headscarf, and you can touch their computer and their keyboard, but you cannot touch them.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, no, I think it's good. I mean, at its best, these kinds of shows are not just good, fun character shows, but are also, it's edutainment, right? You're learning a little bit about, what's going on. And, again, she's an average, first generation American kid. She's brought her culture with her from her country. She's got practicing her religion as she was brought up. And, for some kids, that's super important. We see Nakia sort of declaring that, like, she's kind of trying to find her own niche within her religion, and Kamala's experience
I like
is different.
The scene where, I like how she says to the fact that she's now becoming a woman and she started wearing the hijab, that even her parents can't look her in the eye anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think as a cultural study as well as a character study, I think this has been a really good show. It's not beating you in the face with it, but it's also it's there, and it's part of who she is, and I think that's really valuable.
Well, even the Islamic rap, which we're sure going to talk about as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's so funny because she, in the last episode, she went to the Avengers Con. She got caught. She got in trouble, and her parents are like, "Who are you?" Her mom gives her, a real tough time. And in this episode, she comes home and she apologizes and then says, "Hey, can I go to a party with boys and alcohol?" And they're like, "Okay, yeah, you can go." I'm like, "What? Like, that didn't add up." But she gets to go to the party that Zoe's having. She says, Nakia and Bruno will be there, and, I'll be home by 9:00, and it's fine. They go there, and of course, Kamran, the sexy, the boy, has got his shirt off, and he's doing a flip into the pool, and, she's got, drool coming down her chin, and of course, the cops show up, so they all jump into Kamran's car, and she and Kamran are bonding, and they're talking about Bollywood movies, and Bruno is clearly in the backseat getting kind of jealous, and of course, Kamran asks for her phone number, and, the two of them start to connect, and it's really funny. And of course, Kamran dismisses Bruno by calling him Brian, which is really funny. It's so funny that, she sort of, everything seems to be coming up roses for her. But of course, that's the setup, right? She goes from being this sort of, nerdy, awkward kid. All of a sudden, she's got these powers and things are starting to turn out the other way. But wait for the other shoe to drop. We get a funny scene where she's in class and her nose starts to glow like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but in sort of a greenish blue. She goes into the bathroom, and she's hiding in the stall, of course, and that's where we get that scene with Nakia where she's talking about her parents and just the awkwardness of being a young Muslim woman, and just how complex that can be. And then from there, we end up with the scene where, Bruno finds out from his guidance counselor that he's gotten into this cool Caltech program that he really wanted to go to, because he's clearly a very smart kid. And of course, now he's feeling threatened because he was, he's got, Kamala, and she's got these powers, and now Kamran's showed up, and clearly he's, sort of into her too. And how's that going to work? And of course, he's, just trying to sort of reconcile that when he goes outside the school with Kamala, and she ends up going to on a date basically with Kamran, where she gets to drive his car, and then they go out on this date and they almost get busted, and then they kind of get busted, but then they play a little trick on her brother and his fiance by saying, oh, he's an extended cousin. Oh yeah, man, I think I remember you.
It was weird that he like switched from his like British accent to
Pakistani accent.
Yeah, and play it off as, what was it, Great British Bake Off or something that he was.
Yeah, again, funny scene. Her brother, the actor who's playing her brother, is really funny and charming too. But yeah, it's again another one where she realizes like she in her mind is not doing anything inappropriate. She's hanging out with a boy, and of course she's attracted to him, but she's not betraying her parents' trust. But again, culturally, she's not allowed to be with a boy who's not a family member, so she has to say this is actually our cousin, because otherwise I'd be in deep trouble, because my brother's very pious and I would get in trouble for being with someone I'm not supposed to be. So again, interesting just a little subtle culture piece in there too. We end up with the two of them sort of going their separate ways. We end up back at the house, and Kamala's with her family, and they're sitting around the table and they're talking about it's her brother's fiance is asking questions about where they were from and what their life experiences were, and they talk about the partition, which of course we've seen portrayed in pop culture. I know there was a great Doctor Who episode that dealt with that in the last couple of years, but the partition where the British pulled out of what was then India, and of course the Muslims moved to the north, and the Hindus moved to the south, and then they partitioned it and created Pakistan. And so they sort of talk about that story, and then they sort of create this sort of more mystery around, the bangle belonged to this it's a great grandmother, and so they tell the story about how she followed a trail of stars to get back to her family. They were separated at the train station, and somehow she followed this trail of stars, and the trail of stars led her back to the train just in the moment it was about to leave, and they all got out. And then it's in that moment that the bangle starts to glow again, and of course Kamala passes out, and I like that they're throwing Zamzam at her. Zamzam is like holy water, but it comes from Mecca. I thought that was really, again, it's a very nice, sort of very specific thing culturally. Like, that's what you do. You splash them with holy water. That will get her to wake up.
And the focus on food is a key thing in many cultures, where they were like, so did you eat too much, or maybe not enough?
Did you not enough? Yeah.
It was like, clearly your gut is something wrong. That's why you seemingly just passed out for no reason.
That is something that my immigrant grandmother would have said 100% said. Absolutely. Are you hungry? Are you not hungry? Are you full? Are you sick? Are you not sick? Like, it just, that was perfect. So of course now, she wakes up and she's just like, oh, no, I'm fine. But of course she's realizing that this bangle, her family history, there's clearly something happening here. So she tries to reach out to her grandmother. She calls her grandmother in Pakistan, and is just like, hey, what's going on? What I don't understand. And her mom or grandmother won't really reveal that, but it sort of comes out that this belonged to your great grandmother. She was the shame of the family. We don't like to talk about her or whatever, and so again deepens the mystery. We go to the Eid, the end of Eid festival, where the whole Muslim community in Jersey City's together there from their mosque, and they're having a good time and they're celebrating, and of course, there's this sort of subplot through the episode of Nakia is going to run for a seat on the board of the mosque, even though, it's traditionally men, it's traditionally older men. She's running up against other people. And so a very funny scene where they're all sort of trying to do, a little campaigning for her. She goes after Kamala's dad, which is a very funny scene. You wouldn't want to ruin the dreams of a young woman, would you? A woman who's practically like your daughter, your second daughter. That was so good. And he's just looking more and more awkward. Yeah, it's good performances in this show. And then, then we end up with the little subgroup names killed me. The Illuminantes made me laugh so loud. That was so funny. Like, I mean, Tim, you must have experienced that, right? The Indian aunties, the Pakistani aunties, right? They're infamous and famous. This sort of the gossip and they know everything.
Yeah, the auntie mafia. Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so good. And so there again, we get a little bit more of a taste of, everybody knows about your family. They got this, black sheep in the past. And so again, a little more teasing for that. One of the kids is trying to take a selfies up in the tower of the mosque and starts to fall out. And of course, this is the opportunity for Kamala to go once more and be the hero. So the kid falls out of the window, and then she goes and puts her uniform on. That one kind of stumbled for me. I'm like, maybe rescue the kid. But she apparently stops and goes and finds her Captain Marvel costume that she wore in the last episode to go do that. So that was kind of a weird timing question mark. She goes and she sort of, goes up there, rescues this little boy who's going to fall out of the tower using her hard light platforms. And then she's trying to climb down with him, and she has another one of those very weird visions where she's seeing this woman's face beckoning to her, and her platform fades, and of course this poor little boy starts to fall. She reaches out to grab him with one of her sort of hard light hands, but he can't be caught, so she ends up basically breaking his fall a little bit using those platforms, but he ends up taking a pretty hard tumble, landing onto the top of a car, complaining that he hurt his ankle. So again, a save, but not the best save for sure. And as she's trying from there to sort of make her get away so that they don't find out who she is, of course, Damage Control, who we saw teased earlier in this episode, and then obviously at the end of the previous episode in the post-credit scene, Damage Control, the Department of Damage Control shows up, and they're trying to catch her, and she's, trying to evade them, but not doing a great job of it, and a car pulls up and opens the door and says, "Get in," and it's Kamran, and so you're thinking, well, how does the math add up on this? How does Kamran know who she is and what she's doing? She gets in and she turns around and sees the face of the woman who she's been having in her visions. And Kamran says, "Oh, by the way, let me introduce you to my mom." And that's, of course, the little sort of cliffhanger we end up on. Yeah, interesting. Like it's God, this show is likable. It's just so very likable. It's not the puzzle blocks that we've had with things like Moon Knight. It's certainly lacking in some of the maturity and the intensity, but it's such a charming show, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit candy coated though. I mean,
yeah,
it does seem to be like targeting a much younger audience.
For sure.
Like it's not. I mean, there's not as much pew pew in there, like as you would expect in sort of a Marvel type story, and there's not a lot of fisticuffs. It's mostly it's social media points and the clothing you wear and the music you listen to and the kids at school.
But I don't think that's a bad thing, though. I really think there's a place for this kind of show.
Yeah, what I really like about it is the sort of as they say with different ethnicities and social groups, like it's good to be seen. If you're a dark-haired young lady, in preteen or even in teen and high school, it's good to be seen, to have the lifestyle you live normalized, right? And it's good for people like me too. Like I don't know anybody. I mean, I know Muslims, but I don't know. I've never really talked to them about going to mosque, right? Mm-hmm. And that kind of stuff, right? And I'm, my whole experience is I've been to Anglican church 1,000 times, and I've been to Catholic church 1,000 times, and even the differences between those are quite noticeable, right? So yeah, and same thing with synagogue and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and it's an absolute truism that, one of the best ways to break down the us and them walls is just to create those familiarities, You're right. I've never gone to a mosque. I, again, have lots of Muslim friends, but I've never gone to mosque with them. And I found myself, to an extent, understanding based on just some of the experiences I've had with my other friends or family in church and different religions. I've certainly found parallels where I was like, oh, that's kind of like this, that's kind of like this, but still, new experiences, new things to learn. And yeah, I think it's very valuable. It's very healthy.
Mm. Yeah. And I like the sort of the trope of the Bruno and Bruno's sort of kind of getting his nose out of joint, and he's got this amazing chance to go off and do this amazing. I like the guidance counselor says, You know, when you're watching the movie and you see that part of the movie where the person's life changes, like, you know, completely.
Yeah. This
like
is that
they
moment.
win the lottery, or they're given a wand or whatever. He goes, "This is that moment."
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Bruno is Peter Parker if he never gets bitten by the spider, is the vibe I got out of the character and the actor's portrayal.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way to sum him up, isn't it?
Yeah, and I do like how the stakes are very personal to a teenage girl, right? Like after she's with Kamran and she's presumably imagining, sort of floating her way into the house, and it kind of almost feels like she's going to break into song. Is a very different style, and for me, the infusion of Pakistani and Muslim culture into this show is interesting because I did not know that I have been missing out, apparently, by not seeing if I can go attend Eid Mubarak festivals somewhere. I didn't know out of ignorance what was involved, but it looks pretty dang good. Like, there's food. Yeah. You can go do stuff. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was like a festival thing that you can go do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, though. I mean, Bruno clearly has spent time growing up with Kamala and is comfortable with her family and everything like that. And of course, he wears, you know, an appropriate outfit for the occasion and stuff like that. I do wonder, you know, I mean, obviously some more so than others, just like this true with any other religious group. I'm sure that there are, you know, Muslim communities that would be happy to see you there and have you there and everything else. And other ones would be like, why? So, yeah, but again, I think the way that they portray it where, you know, Bruno is trying to fit into their culture, not trying to make them fit into his culture. Again, that's so deftly done versus, you know, if this story was done not long ago, it might have been more about Kamala trying to fit in with the white kids, right?
Yeah.
And here it's about him trying to fit in with the brown kids. And that's such a lovely way of spinning it.
I'm a little unclear now that, you know, after watching the episode and then hearing your recap and not really thinking about the cultural implications. So when Amir sees Kamala with Kamran and realizes or thinks momentarily that he's not related to her, his face sinks, right? When he's like, oh yeah, this boy. And why is that treated different than Bruno, who seems to get a lot of grace for being a boy as well? Like he's treated differently, and I might have missed something as to why he's treated differently. Like, why don't they keep him at kind of arm's length from the daughter?
Yeah, I think part of it is supposed to be the fact that they've known Bruno since he was a child. So I think they perceive him not as they almost perceive him as a family member. I mean, you see the relationship that he has with her dad in the first episode, where he's like over helping her dad, like independent of hanging out with her, is like helping them with, you know, stuff around the house, and I think they consider him more or less a family member. They don't consider him a strange boy, as it were, right? And therefore he's not perceived as a you know, an impure threat to her. Whereas Kamran, again, is, you know, an older boy, someone they haven't met, and, you know, again, culturally, probably what they would perceive as a more viable, you know, romantic candidate. And so therefore, if they were caught out like that, without him having, like, you know, met the family and the whole 9 yards, I think they would think that would be inappropriate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They also established that it's different too, because her brother, both in the comic and in the show, is a more pious Muslim than her parents. Her parents even make a point of saying, we brought you here to be whatever you could be. And in the book, they say the same thing, basically, like, we brought you here so that you could have more freedom of choice. I mean, it's notable that her mom does not wear a hijab or a headscarf. It's notable that she doesn't as well. But her brother dresses very much more like somebody who is
traditional Muslim.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of telling. And I think that's why she's a little more nervous about her brother's reaction. I don't think it's about her parents. I think it's more about the mosque and the community that would perceive this as a slight or a you know, misstep.
That makes sense. I I might have missed where they mentioned the timeline, but from the difference in the way that the brother is compared to Kamala, I said, I bet you it's like some other folks I know where the older sibling grew up a little bit in the old country, probably came over as a kid, tends to retain more of the old country ways, whereas the sibling who's younger, who was born here, is 100% American, which Kamala fits into that sort of trope, right? That she's like very heavily not like her brother, right? She's got the New Jersey sort of thing to her.
Yep. And just to steal a little bit from the comics side of it, in the comics pretty early in the first few issues of the book, they establish there's a good conversation between Kamala and her dad where she's talking about like why her mom's so protective of her and everything else. And she said, when we had your brother, we had some complications and we didn't think we were going to be able to have more kids. So he was born and they thought he was like going to be the only child. And then years later, they ended up getting pregnant again and having her. And Kamal means perfection in Arabic. And so they had this beautiful, perfect little girl, and that's why they're so protective of her, because she was sort of this miracle. They did not expect to have more kids. They wanted to have a big family. They wanted to have more kids, and they didn't think they'd be able to. And that she came along, and that's why they're kind of overprotective of her. Is that like they weren't expecting to have her, and they treasure her because she's this sort of second one. But I think you're right, Jaime. I think there's this gap between them in both culture and there's this gap between them in age that kind of, while her brother is a very kind person, both in the books and in the show, I think they're just, you're right. It's just different enough culturally, even though they've been raised by the same people in the same place or in a different place. Right.
Yeah. I remember some folks I used to work with more than a decade ago, contractors from India, and eventually got their at least green card, possibly citizenship here. And they had a young daughter that born here, and they were talking about like raising them very traditional and whatever. And I was like, wait, I thought you said you were going to stay here. And they said, yeah. I said, bro, your daughter's not Indian. I was like, what do you mean? I'm Indian, her mother's Indian? I was like, no, your daughter is American. Like you're in for a rough surprise if you stay here in the United States, because she is not going to have the connection to India that you do. Her connection would be primarily to the United States. So just be aware when she wants to start dating as a teenager, that's going to be a very different conversation here in the United States for your American daughter than it would be for the same person in India.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. I mean, I have a bunch of friends for my entire life growing up in Canada. This area of Canada is very multicultural. There are people who came here as young people. There are people who were born here and, their parents are immigrants, which is not dissimilar. My dad's an immigrant too. It's not a dissimilar experience, but who they are is Canadian. Like, they speak Canadian English. They are very different from who their parents are. And that, I think that's one of the brilliant things about casting Iman Vellani in this too, is, that's her experience too. She's raised in the culture here in Canada, but she's a Canadian kid. She's like a lot of other kids who, to someone who looks at them, they might be like, oh, you're from elsewhere, but that's not their experience. This is all they've known. This is their life. This is who they are. No, again, I think they're doing a really nice job of walking a nice line between giving you those moments and letting you into the culture without smacking you in the face with it. Like it is important to her. It's part of who she is, but it's not all who she is. She's still just a normal kid with crushes on boys and trouble in school and all these other things going on that every kid has. Right.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm enjoying it so far. I think I got to be honest, after some of the sort of, Moon Knight was pretty intense. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was kind of intense. Even Spider-Man was kind of intense, the final chapter of that trilogy with, people dying and all kinds of stuff. This is kind of a nice breath of fresh air from Marvel. It's nice and fun and just different. And I think that's very good for them.
Yep, and the music's good. Should we move on to a watch list?
Hells yeah.
Hells yeah. Oh, I mean, here you go again.
Yeah, if you liked the Gazelle Automation's What If Filmation had done Star Trek The Next Generation, they did a little mini episode of Star Trek Voyager in the same style as Star Trek Voyager, the animated series. And to no one's surprise, certainly not mine, when I heard that this was available, I said, I bet you they did the Warp 10 thing, right? And they did do the Warp 10 episode with Captain Janeway and Lieutenant Paris as, like salamander kind of creatures. And
yeah.
If you watch this, it's great. It's only about 5 to 6 minutes. You definitely need to pause at 5 minutes and 25 seconds with the very shocked Chakotay when he's realized that they've had kids, sort of thing. And I also enjoyed the old school reuse of Tuvok's eyebrow sort of thing, his quizzical eyebrow.
Yeah.
It's good
great.
stuff.
I'm totally going to watch this when we're done.
Yeah.
All right, I got a couple things. So as I mentioned in our watch list last week, we were going to go see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on stage here in Toronto. I will not spoil anything, but I will say that if you get a chance, it's totally worth making an effort. It was very, very interesting. It was... So to be clear, I think we talked about it last week too. There's two versions of this play. There's a full version and then there's a truncated version. The full version is 2 separate performances and it's like 7 hours long. This one, they basically tightened those 2 stories into one story and it's about 3 hours long.
3 hours.
3 hours long. So it's quite long.
You pack a lunch or what do you do?
I mean, you can get they walk around and offer Haagen-Dazs bars like you're at the ballpark or the hockey game. But yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it's timey-wimey, and so there's lots of characters that are sort of popping up where you don't expect them, and there's some pyrotechnic effects, and there's lots of stuff using technology where they there's wire work, so there's stuff like characters are swooping into the crowd and stuff like that at times. Like there's some really interesting ways of telling this story where part of it is just, it's interesting to sort of see the next generation. It's, Harry Potter, the next generation, right? It's Harry's an older man. It literally picks up at the moment that the last film and book end, which is Harry seeing his kids off on the train to Hogwarts Express, and it's them basically picking up the story from there and the adventures that the kids have that tie into Harry's life and wraps in all the characters and everything. But it's really good, and the performances were really strong. The special effects were quite well done. Even some of the stuff where if you were further, like we were reasonably close. We actually had lovely seats for the show. If you were a little further back, I think your experience would be a little different. But there are times where you're like, "Whoa, how did they do that? That's really good." And the sets are fantastic. And yeah, it's fun to sort of dip back into that world again. I could not help but watch this whole thing and think, I wonder if somewhere down the road, when they get a little older, if they will, pay back up the Brinks truck for Emma Watson and Rupert Grint and Daniel Radcliffe to come back and replay their parts and make the movie version of this. I think it would make a really entertaining movie as well, although for the time being it's totally worth making an effort to go see it if it comes to a community near you. It's a fun night out. We went as a whole family, and I think, you sort of go in a little apprehensive, like, how are they going to do this? But by the intermission, we were like, this is really good. And lots of good twists and turns and lots of familiar faces and good performances. Totally worth seeing. So, yeah, if you get a chance, do that.
I will. Okay.
On the TV front, we talked about how June is just a bonanza of content. The next thing up is Umbrella Academy season 3 starts next week. I love that series. I think it's fantastic. It's shot here in the city, so always kind of fun to sort of see the Toronto of it all too. And we've talked about it, obviously some interesting stuff coming up this season. It ends on a bit of a weird cliffhanger season 2 where, they transport back to their time period, but the academy has changed from the Umbrella Academy to the Sparrow Academy. And so clearly something has gone awry in their fixing of the past in season 2. So that'll be really interesting to see how that comes together. And then on top of that, of course, we have, our lead character, it has transitioned from being a female actor to a male actor. So how they're going to incorporate that into the story in Elliot Page's life, how that's going to work is going to be interesting to see how they bring that together. So I'm really looking forward to it. Honestly, I gotta be honest, it's the same thing as Stranger Things. I kind of wish that they were putting it out week by week. The fact that they're going to drop it all is a little frustrating, to have to sort of try and get through it before you can get spoiled by going online. And you can say that you can try and avoid it, but I got spoiled even in I watched Stranger Things within less than a week and I was already spoiled on a couple of things because you just can't avoid it. I mean, I work in social media. You can't avoid it. It's so hard to stay away from. Even Netflix themselves were spoiling stuff. They were putting stuff on their feeds of like scenes from the later episodes of this new season. I was like, hey, that is just a dick move. But it's not going to stop me. I'm still watching, and I can't wait for this one. And last but not least, I had to put this in for you guys. I hope you take the time to watch it because it's ridiculous. There's a video that is speaking of Jaime Lopez's smash cut of How's It Going? It is all of the Make It So's from Jean-Luc Picard from TNG.
Okay.
So if you want to see Patrick Stewart say the line "Make It So" 86 times, you can go ahead and watch that video.
It's an interesting cut because you can tell the transition from season 1 to like season 3, where it feels a little bit more like it's got more gravitas in some of the later stuff. Like he found a pitch and tone to go with it.
Yeah. No, again, it's a stupid thing, but it's undeniably, it's one of those ones where it comes back around again. You watch it for a bit and you're like, okay, that's pretty funny. And then you're like, God, this is never ending. And by the time you get closer to the end, you're like, okay, this is awesome. It's so stupid and ridiculous, but it's so funny.
Right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, hey, Jonathan, people can touch with you. Where would they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as @JPK News.
And Jaime, if people want to get in touch with you.
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithAHair.
All right. My name is Timitra, TIMMITRA. On the Twitter machine is where you can find me. Where I can be found. Yeah, that's it. Until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Oh, my bedtime reminder on my watch just came
There you go. Did you guys watch The Boys as well?
Yes.
Yes, I believe I'm caught up to that. Episode 4 was...
4 was last week's,
okay.
Yeah, great. Still good. I mean, God, that show's good.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with a problem like Homelander?
When all the tricks he might use are no longer effective, he's got nothing left to lose.
Yeah, it really is. It's such a great way that they sort of encapsulate, like how do you defeat somebody who's A, that strong, and B, is just like, yeah, go ahead, come at me. And he's so good. God, Anthony Starr, I really hope he gets recognized at some point. Like, I mean, we had him on our Spockies list this year, and it was nice that The Boys got some recognition, but I really hope Anthony Starr gets some recognition for, some awards and stuff. He's so good. He's so good at being just the worst. I mean, it's a great part, and they give him a lot to do, but God, it's good.
He's got good choices. Like, one I liked is when, I don't remember which episode it was. I think it was one of the first 3, when Huey is there with Starlight and chatting with Homelander, and Huey is mad and walks in closer, and he's actually taller than Homelander, and Homelander kind of just stands there and doesn't flinch per se, but is more like, oh, you have the guts to walk in on me?
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's amusing.
Yeah, just his ability to turn, like, he's got such a great face for emoting, just to go from like that pasted on smile to just like grinding his teeth, and like he's just so good at switching it on and off and on and off, and he's just a freaking delight, that guy. But yeah, I mean, everybody's killing it on that show. It's so good.
Trailers. I just watched the Westworld one.
No, that was the only one I checked in there.
Okay.
Weird timing. They just put it out like a few hours ago.
Yeah. I tried to go back and start watching that again. I got maybe like 15 minutes in, and then, Dustin's been shiny. I mean, it's a difficult week for us because like we're trying to consume all this WWDC stuff and trying to change the world one app at a time.
Yeah. I think for something like a Westworld that's heavily serialized, you're probably better off. I mean, unless you really have the time to binge through the most recent season, you're probably better off looking for a recap of the season on YouTube. It would probably be like 20 to 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll give you probably most what you'll want going into season 4.
Well, what is it? Like, there are 10 episodes per season? I think I'm like on 7. I'm starting the 7th episode. Because the problem is it's been so long since I watched it. I start watching when I'm going, yeah, okay, I've seen this before.
Yeah, and it was a long time ago. They take a long break between their seasons. I think that really impacts things. But
I think about the episode where I got to the Merovingian, I thought, oh, this is not the Matrix. Yeah, I knew that dude, whatever he is. Yeah, I haven't put all the pieces together. And I'm still watching the Jesse Pinkman season. I guess that's the one I'm watching.
Yep.
All right, officially known as the Jesse Pinkman season.
That guy doesn't have another name, does he?
No, Aaron Paul.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Separately, did you all see the breaking news? I say breaking because it only came out a few hours ago. My time is the host cities for the 2026 World Cup in Canada, Mexico, USA.
Toronto and Seattle.
Yep.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so let's start with Canada. So Toronto, Vancouver, those are 2 places. BMO or BMO Field and BC Place. Yeah. 3 cities.
So speaking of small worlds, I happened to be driving. I was driving today because we had a TD Employee Appreciation Week thing. And so I was driving some of the people back to Union Station, which is downtown, where the Hockey Hall of Fame is. And as I was driving by the storefront, actually I was parked in front of the storefront because you don't really move very fast downtown in rush hour. I spied in the window of the Hockey Hall of Fame, gift shop, a retro Toronto Maple Leaf t-shirt, which actually it had the T, so I don't know if that's actually in the Maple Leafs, right? Detroit Red Wings for some reason, and a beautiful Seattle Kraken, home jersey. The black ones or the dark ones look really tempting.
Yeah, are you switching allegiances?
No, just to have the t-shirt or to have the shirt, right? You and I were joking about getting the shirts and wearing them on the show, and next time we do a video one, right?
Yeah. Every time the NHL expands, I call my friend Mike, who is a diehard Flyers fan, and both of us have been long-suffering fans, and I say to him, is this the time that we make the leap to a new team? Because it's heartbreaking being a fan of our 2 teams.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, look at what just happened. I don't know if you watched any of the playoffs. I mean, like, did you see how Toronto, their run? They're, like, killing it. First 3 games, killing it, and then the whole bottom falls out, right? And
yeah.
Well, to be fair, they're the closest team that's come to making Tampa Bay look human. They took the team that won the best record in the entire league in the next round and killed them. So
that's true. Yeah. And I just watched. Happened to tune in yesterday to watch just before the beginning of the third period or the overtime period, and I switched away and came back. I thought, I'll just go away and come back, and like a second later, and then.
Yeah, took them a minute and a half.
Yeah, it's like they were already Colorado won, right? They were already cheering and whatever. Yeah, that won't last. As we know. Do you think it's going to be a 3-peat?
I don't know. I mean, that's a damn good Colorado side. They've been building at this for a while now. Like they're definitely right there. Although I think if you had to say there was one big difference, it would be Tampa's goaltending. Didn't look so great yesterday, but I think over the course of a 7-game series, I think their goaltending wins out. So yes, I do.
Wow. All right. Sorry, Hammy, were you going to say something?
Oh, so rounding out the cities for the World Cup. So you've got 3 in Mexico, Guadalajara, Mexico City, and Monterrey. 11 in the United States. That'd be Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Miami, New York/New Jersey, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and as you all mentioned, Seattle.
New York, New Jersey is my favorite thing. Like, we're not calling it the Meadowlands. It's a swamp. You're going to the swamp. It's not New York. You're in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I'm excited that Toronto got it. I don't know. I think, I knew some of the political background of this. Edmonton's a better place to hold the soccer, frankly. Commonwealth Stadium's bigger and it's better, and there's a great soccer community there. I think they deserve it more than Toronto does, but they put some contingencies on it, basically saying like we have to have like at least half the games in Canada there, and if they were going to put tax dollars towards it. And I think in the end FIFA was just like no. So Toronto ended up with it, even though we have the smallest stadium, one of the smallest stadiums for soccer in North America.
I was going to ask, wasn't it originally a football field?
No, they built it for soccer first, and then they expanded it a little bit to make it home for the Canadian Football League Argos. But they're going to expand it. Right now it's 28,000 seats, which it's a good size for a soccer stadium. Like, it's very intimate and that. But for a World Cup match, that is like sort of embarrassingly small. They're going to expand it with extra bleachers. They're going to make it up to 40,000. But still, it's going to be very small by World Cup standards.
So they're going to put bleachers on the ends?
Yep.
Oh, really? Wow. It's going to go way out into the parking lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
But I'll be really curious to see who comes to which venues too. You know, I'm excited at the prospect of a World Cup being in my backyard, but I'm not as excited when it's, Uruguay versus, South Korea. I don't really care. I want to see, at least a couple of A caliber matches here.
So can we segue over to, on More Than Just Code last week, last time we had an episode, I was talking to Jaime and Mark about the fact that Apple started doing the Friday night baseball thing, and for the first month or so it was really annoying because every time my Apple TV would trick me into clicking on it, I would click on it and it would say the game hasn't started yet because Apple hadn't signed the deal with Canada yet, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that was really annoying. But now just a bit of real-time follow-up. It came on last Friday, I think, and I just clicked on the button just to see what would happen, because I think at WWC they announced that we would have something, and sure enough, I was able to watch 30 seconds of a baseball game, which is about as much as I could take. And so it looks like Friday night baseball is working here. But what I want to ask about is the inking of the deal. I think it was yesterday that Apple got soccer.
Well, that's one of Jaime's stories here in our story notes. So maybe we should wait till this.
Well, no, this is the after show now. We're talking about this after the fact.
Oh no, he's got this in the show notes. Oh, this is the after show?
You're not paying attention. This is the after show.
Okay, this is the pre-after show. Cool.
This is the after show. Jaime knows what I'm talking about. All right, let's put on a show, shall we? Oh, that's going to really mess up the timeline too. Oh no. Sorry, folks. We'll jump in the DeLorean, and we'll set the dial, and we'll go back, an hour and a half, and start the show over again.
Gee, Mr. Peabody, that sounds great.
All righty.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.